righteousness and watch the lies fold. Then you can let the truth flow. On Sonetta TV, Sonetta TV. When you feel that melanin about to explode, like you feel the wind blow. It's Sonetta TV, Sonetta TV. I know you got the truth, but you can get more, so you continue to grow. Sonetta TV, Sonetta TV.
Peace to the family. Welcome everybody. This is kind of a late night. I was hoping to get this show done a little bit earlier. However, there was a big show on Black News 102, and I thought I'd wait. So family, I have a very, very important show tonight, and it's going to make some people very, very unhappy, particularly those of the religious faith, particularly those Christian apologists. And it is what it is. So waiting for some more people to get in, I want to thank Asiatic Soldier for being the first one on. Shalom, peace to you, and I'm hoping I can get a good audience for this particular show. It is what it is. So tonight's show, what it's going to be about, and so let me just put up the title. Ron Green, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen to give you the title as other people begin to come in. And so the show is entitled Further Fallout from Billy Carson, Wes Huff Exchange. Wes Huff's dangerous Christian apologist statement on slavery. A lot of people got caught up with the direct interaction between Wes Huff and Billy Carson, but I don't think enough people stayed to the end to listen to some very, very unfortunate statements by Wes Huff on slavery. And his statements, for me, was chilling. Somebody who studies African American history, the African slave trade, the reasons for that, and for people to have lived through that and then lived through the what happened after slavery up until the period right now. It's very, very chilling. Wes Huff seemed to kind of use the Bible and to talk about slavery. And I'm not going to spoil it by me telling you what he said. I'm going to let you listen to what he said. And I'm going to tell you right now that, excuse my voice, coming over a little bronchitis. Christianity has no bearing whatsoever on the African slave trade as something, an instrument to fix what happened during the African slave trade. Christianity has no bearing in today's reality when it comes to the slave trade. It has nothing, no bearing. People in the Christian world should not mention slavery at all. There's no reason for Christians to talk about the slave trade. So the title again is Further Fallout from Billy Carson, Wes Huff's Exchange, Wes Huff's Dangerous Christian Apologist Statement on Slavery. Before we start, I want to let you know something that's coming up. On Sonetta's channel, there's a debate between Sonetta and Apostle Zyquan that is coming up soon, and that's what they're talking about. And so that's coming up soon, as well as the other shows that Sonetta puts on. Here, when I'm able to get back to some of my regularly scheduled programming dealing with Nile Valley culture and African history, one of the things that will be that I'm interested in is January 11th, 2025. One of our elder sabers on Nile Valley culture, Benachi Montgomery, is doing there's going to be a show on his new book called The Problem with Using Amu, which is Euro-Asian Ways of Knowing, to translate the Medu Neter. And I think this is Jenna Monk's flyer work, which is fantastic. In the sense that people who want to talk about ancient Egyptian language and ancient Egyptian culture, or so-called ancient Egyptian culture, or what we say is Kemet or Nile Valley or Tawi civilization, we see a lot of pseudo-judo around this. And so Jeremiah put chakras, aliens, and Kemet, pseudoscience abounds. These are things that's coming out of the Amu ways of knowing, and how it translates today to popular thinking on Nile Valley culture from a non-African point of view. And so our Seba Benachi is going to look at language and the ambiguousness of language and help us to understand why we can't trust Euro-Asiatic thinking when it comes to Nile Valley culture. And this flyer kills me at the end, because this is actually what's going on. Pyramids and spaceships and Nile Valley Africa, as if this stuff is real. And this is part of the reason how Billy Carson got in trouble, because this is the domain that people like him and others live in. And then they get trapped up because they really don't even know the European ways of knowing and thinking. And so they get trapped up. I want to shout out to Abjuer. My brother Ankh is in the building. Thank you so much for appearing. Fatah Anu, Venom K, Timmy Turner, Ron Green, and of course Asiatic Soldier. And Saber Benachi is actually going to be on a number of shows, and so hopefully Anka Cat will host him, and I think that that's in the works, and we'll be looking forward to that, because you know Ankh is a big critic of language and culture. And so that's important. Okay. Um, Let me do this. Mika, how are you? Um, so what I'm going to do is I am going to play Wes Huff. And I'm taking myself out the room. There you go. And this show is primarily going to be centered on what Mr. Wes Huff says. And so he's front and center. So let's start to listen to some of what Mr. Wes Huff has to say about and how he traps himself up when it comes to um, slavery. All right. So you're ready. Who else is Solomonic TV? Peace to you. And thank you, Sister Mika, for showing up. Let's listen to Wes Huff. And I'm telling you, what this man says has been overlooked, but it is very, very dangerous. So let's listen to it.
Mhm. And what is the context of what Ephesians is saying? So I think this is very important because that we don't take text in isolation. So within Scripture, and this is why all the abolition movements throughout history have only been Judeo-Christian movements. There's never been an abolition movement that wasn't Christian. And
okay, first, did you hear that? Everybody, did you hear this? Listen to what he is saying.
And what is the context of what Ephesians is saying? So I think this is very important because that we don't take text in isolation. So within Scripture, and this is why all the abolition movements throughout history have only been Judeo-Christian movements. There's never been an abolition movement that wasn't Christian. And actually, there's the reason.
Okay, so that's a lie, right? Immediately, someone like Brother Unk will say that's a straight up lie. It's dangerous. Abolitionist movements were. There's never been an abolitionist movement that wasn't Christian. See, this is what we're dealing with: this dangerous Christian Hebrew religious apologist. They want to reframe it to say that, wait, the last time I checked, right, it was people in that movement that caused slavery, and not only caused slavery, used the Bible to justify it. Am I right? Press one if I'm right. Press one if I'm right. Meanwhile, while you're deciding whether or not to press one for me to be right, I'm going to let you listen to it again, right? Because we have a problem in analysis by not understanding what people are saying based on the complexion that's in front of you. Listen to this man.
And what is the context of what Ephesians is saying? So I think this is very important because that we don't take text in isolation. So within Scripture, and this is why all the abolition movements throughout history have only been Judeo-Christian movements. There's never been an abolition movement that wasn't Christian. And actually, there's the recent work by historian Tom Holland, not the Spider-Man actor, different Tom Holland, but his recent Dominion highlights this fact very well. This is not a Christian, but in it, he shows that going right back into the antiquity with the Cappadocian Fathers was the first abolition movement, and then into
that was the first abolitionist movement, right? Fathers, right? Now, see the vantage point that he's talking about. Who Wes Huff started slavery? How did slavery begin? But let's go.
To the British and the American abolition movements, these were fundamentally Christian movements, right?
So then he switches to the American and the British abolitionist movement, and they were Christians. See, this is what was overlooked, and so that's why I'm so happy to bring this to you. Wes Huff, you are a liar. You are a Christian apologist, and what you're saying is very, very dangerous because you are representing the same sentiment of Christian apologists during this period, right? And you're misreading it, but let's listen further.
And by Christians because of the idea that when Paul, who wrote that letter to Ephesians, says, in Christ there is no slave nor free. He's breaking down those barriers. So in Ephesians, when he says,
Paul was lying. In Rome, there were slaves and there were free, right? So now, but you touched on, it would have been all right if you stayed in the Bible world, right? But you related it to African people and other peoples, right? So now we have to call you what you are, right? Either misread, ignorant, a liar, doing it on purpose, or just simply ignorant.
slaves obey your masters. He's operating on the socioeconomic context of what he's going on. And he's saying, hey, we have slaves and we have free people, okay? If you're a believing slave, if you're a slave who believes in Jesus as the Messiah, don't be equitable in how you are living your life. Reflect Christ accurately. And
so you're going to bring, you're a slave master and you're going to bring in Christ. Now, see, this is the type of thinking. This is, unfortunately, whether he knows it or not, this is white supremacy 101, right? So he's doing the same thing in the context of using the Bible to either justify slavery, right? Or use the Bible to have some, how can I say, differences with slavery. But the issue is that the system of slavery in America was based on Hebraic Christian concepts. So which Christian are you? Are you you are trying to be the abolitionist Christian? Or you trying to, because it doesn't seem like you're trying to be the slavery Christian, but for us it's one and the same. And that you're misreading actually what history says. But let's continue.
And that's a movement that he is fundamentally working towards, that eventually starts to completely take out the legs from the slave movement in general.
By the way, I love that this is respectful. I don't feel this is all just.
No, it's not respectful. Now, there's something else going on in this dialogue. Okay, so Billy Carson has been kind of like seated, meaning that Wes Huff was able to show Billy that he seemingly made a mistake. He lied about Christ being crucified. And that's, these Christian apologists are making a big deal, because for them, Billy Carson, right, was attacking their faith. And so Wes Huff was able to punish Billy Carson seemingly on making an error on what text he was referring to, was referring to the wrong text. But guess what, family? None of that matters at this point right now, because he has moved into a point of dealing with British and American slavery. So the Bible stuff, that would be fine. You can, if that's what you want to do, you can analyze that. But now we see Christian apologists, white supremacy at work, when it's now reapplying those same concepts in 2024, where here we have the best technology, right, to fact check, right? And that we don't need the Bible at all to understand what happened during that period, because Christianity did nothing but cause slavery. Nothing. But you're going to now slip in, you think you had a big win with Billy, but basically you have converted yourself into that, that Christian European who really didn't care about slavery, cared about your Bible, right? Now we see who you people really are. So let's listen.
In a healthy way.
I appreciate this.
I think.
Oh, and I wanted to say something else is going on that's really diabolical. So when he was talking to Billy Carson, you know, he was on his A game, right? Billy Carson was his enemy, right? But now he's talking to the host, right? And the dialogue is much more given. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that the host that he is speaking to, right? He's trying to work with him. He's trying to keep him into the Christian world where the host has some doubts about Christianity. So he's kind and gentler. And it just so happens that they are of the same or similar ethnicity as far as being European. But Billy Carson was a great enemy, right? So his tone with the host is very kind and gentle and trying to be as those people did during the slave trade, as those people did during when slavery was at its height, that they can talk to each other in a kind and gentle way where people were being trafficked. I got you, Wes Huff, right? And you're going to pay, right? Based on your own words.
This is going to give us but this is where you and I sitting down there would be like, great that you came up, but like, what were the methodologies did you use to conclude that him saying the slave, be the master to the slave, you're able to interpret it meaning that he's meaning that? Because I was also raised in the church, and I would question when they're like, oh, in the old days when they said women don't wear jewelry, that's a sin. You would know the exact verse. And then
okay, let me put my face on here so I don't get striked, right? So he's trying to keep the host of the show in, meaning he's trying to work with him, right? Billy is on the sidelines, right? So the conversation is between white folks now, right? Now, when I mean white folks, I mean not all white folks are like this. There are Europeans, right, that actually know the truth, right, that can analyze the truth, right? But in this particular case, he is being a kind and gentler person right? And leaving out a lot of important information. Okay, so let's continue because it's going to get really nasty.
they're like, oh, but that was just written because at that time that was what they did. But then the next week they're telling me, but if you believe in the Bible, you either believe in all of it or none of it. I'm like, well, how come you're
Yes.
And they're like, but it's okay for women to do that. Now, those are the things where it's like, we've got to be honest here. Like, if you're
okay, so the host is asking him some questions, and Wes Huff is trying to keep him into Christianity.
respectfully challenging Billy, Billy's going to go and do
Yes.
research and be like, okay, now I want to see how to have, because we're all critical thinkers. Those things seem to just get so blindly pushed over when they're like, but that doesn't apply now. And it's like,
Right.
I think there's more common ground than people think, and some awards to recall, but also like, it's weird to me to think that he would be like, women aren't allowed to wear jewelry and this crap. And then Jesus came and he's like, none of that matters. And then for them to be like,
Yeah.
oh, that only made sense then, but now it doesn't apply.
Okay, so mind you, everything that he's going to do, he's going to weave his spider web of Christianity. So now they're talking about women, right? Let's see what he says, the dumb thing that he says about women.
believe everything.
Right. So this is what's referred to.
You know what? Like,
Yeah.
This
So this is what's.
This is why, like, I'm always like.
Yeah. So there's a discipline called hermeneutics, and that's the methodology of interpretation. So there are multiple levels that you interpret something. So whether we're dealing with, say, the book of Ephesians, or we're dealing with Tacitus's Annals, we look at something and we contextually read it within the framework of how it's being written. So there's a historical approach where we look at the context. Okay, Paul is writing to a church in Ephesus. What's going on in Ephesus, and how is what he's saying in that city in what is modern day Turkey, how does that pertain to that particular time and framework? Whereas Paul.
Okay. All right. I can respect that at that time period. So how the hell do you end up talking about the slave trade, right? Different time period, right? The patriarchs of the New Testament are all dead for thousands of years. How do you get to read into something old, outdated, having nothing to do with a particular culture, read that into something that was happening from 1482 on? How do you read that into 1,000 years later? How do you do that? All right, let's listen to you, PhD Wes Huff.
Coming from where is
now, though, is my question, because
so here's how I answer that question.
I love that, Wes, but you're starting to give. Sorry to interrupt you. I believe in God. Like, I believe in and Billy believes in God too. I get what
Billy believes in God too. Okay, so this is a conversation between the two of them, and Wes Huff is trying to keep him in the faith, right? But what he did do is stab the African on the way, and we're going to get back to what he did.
Why things are challenging, things need to be challenged, but it's saying that was to women then, but being raised in the church,
it's yes and no.
They say, but then they'll pick something and they're like, but that doesn't apply to them now, because in that context, he was talking to this certain town where they were having problems with it. I'm like, well, that's not written anywhere. And they're like, well, if you go to blah blah blah, and then they say, well,
okay, I have to skip through this because this is just the preliminary of it. So let's see if I can find.
I do think there is parts where things got.
There is an original audience, whether that's the ancient Israelite in the ancient Near Eastern culture, or whether it's the Greco-Roman believer in Jesus within the city of Ephesus. So as historians, and I mean, most of the books on this end of my shelf are what are referred to as commentary.
Who cares? Okay, who cares? You mentioned slavery. I care less, right?
Where Paul is writing, and he's writing to a particular group. And so we look at, okay, what does it mean for a woman to wear and adorn themselves with gold in a first century Greco-Roman context, right? It has to do with the fact that prostitutes would wear those things. So we need.
Did you hear that? Prostitutes would wear gold, right? Royalty wouldn't wear gold. Herod's family wouldn't wear gold, right? Only prostitutes wear gold. Prostitutes could afford gold. Let's listen to your woman-hating self.
Throw me under the bus for that.
Yeah. So, how I would answer that is I would say this. So you do have examples of where Paul is writing, and he's writing to a particular group. And so we look at, okay, what does it mean for a woman to wear and adorn themselves with gold in a first century Greco-Roman context, right? It has to do with the fact that prostitutes would wear those things. So we need to.
So all women that wear gold, not all women that wear gold, but prostitutes who are women who wear gold, right? I guess you could be deemed a prostitute because you're wearing gold, right? And Paul is talking about this. Okay, but Paul, interesting. Okay, Paul had resources beyond resources to travel. But he's saying something about women, so let's let him finish.
The question: what is the intention of the text? So yes,
I gotta ask
we can
you again,
take
though,
the meaning.
But how do you interpret that? That's what I've been. The reason I'm interrupting you is I've heard this. I've been there, done that.
Yeah. When he says, don't adorn yourself with jewelry, the original audience, and we can explore this by the historical analysis.
How dumb that sounds? Saying the original audience, then later on saying, but now it's okay for this audience because these women and stuff.
No, because the point that he's making.
I get why people if we're gonna, we gotta.
Now he didn't talk to Billy like this, right? He's talking. Why is he talking to the host so kindler and gentler? But still, he's still trying to lead him. See, this is the game. I want you to see what is happening. He's trying to keep the host in the fold because the host has just simply questions. He's not an enemy to Christianity like Billy was, right? Where, but now Huff gets to be himself. And this is what we're going to examine. That's why I have only his face on the screen.
Be open-minded. We're punching holes in other stuff to punch holes in our own. And even if it's agreeing, don't you think that's a little, I get what you're saying. If prostitutes right now, if prostitutes all wear a red band around their neck and that signals what all prostitutes are, and it's don't wear that.
Prostitutes have tattoos, and a lot of women who aren't prostitutes have tattoos.
Right. I don't think it's this black and white that only the prostitute, and also you're only talking about in one lip.
Okay, so the host checked him, right? And the host just used general logic, right? But Wes Huff is trying to build some biblical morality on what you should wear, right? See, this is a problem when people actually think like this. They can't think in modern day thinking. Okay, so where are we at now?
I'm telling you, Billy, it's for me. I think he'll get back out. If it wasn't for.
Yeah, sorry, I cut out quite a bit there, and so I think I missed a large portion. So I apologize for that.
And I'm just.
About stuff that I want to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, let me just say this. So the most quoted verse of the Bible in the Bible is a version of Exodus.
Okay, so now I'm gonna shout out to Born Dog. Thanks for joining and supporting. I appreciate it. And please do what he says. Thumb up the video so I could get some analytics going. I would appreciate that. Pan-African Designs. Wes is doing what Europeans do. I ain't mad at him. Not all Europeans is doing what Wes Huff is doing. There are Europeans that are scientists. There are Europeans that are atheists. There are Europeans that, how can I say, that fight for things right. And there's Europeans that fight for things wrong. Wes Huff is doing something specific. He's bringing in the Bible to fight. And that is where this thing becomes ludicrous, right? And bringing in the Bible in anything past that time period of the Bible is just simply ludicrous and just not good analysis. Study the religion, if that's what you are, PhD, study it for in its context. Please don't weed it into anything past that particular period.
34:6, which fundamentally describes who God is, that he's compassionate and loving, full of grace and mercy and abounding in steadfast love. And so, in fact, if you read.
Now, again, he brings in the Bible. Now, he says this lie. Yes, it's written, but it's a lie. Well, let's listen to him when he says again.
Yeah, sorry, I cut out quite a bit there, and so I think I missed a large portion, so I apologize for that.
And I'm just.
About stuff that I want to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, so let me just say this. So the most quoted verse of the Bible in the Bible is a version of Exodus 34:6, which fundamentally describes who God is, that he's compassionate and loving, full of grace and mercy and abounding in steadfast love. And so, in fact, if you read the book of Jonah, the
Is God that? Is he loving? Didn't he flood the whole world? Didn't he kill babies? Isn't he a consummate killer of those people who don't believe in him? He's full of what? Let's listen to you again, Huff. Let's listen to you again, Huff.
yeah, can I? Sorry, I cut out quite a bit there, and so I think I missed a large portion. So I apologize for that.
And I'm just
Excited about stuff that I want to say. Go ahead.
I'll show
Yeah. So let me just say this. So the most quoted verse of the Bible in the Bible is a version of Exodus 34:6, which fundamentally describes who God is, that he's compassionate and loving, full of grace and mercy. And
Yeah, didn't he harden the heart of the Pharaoh? Didn't he cause the Pharaoh's heart to be hardened so that this thing could happen? Like even in your own book, you are just wrong, right? Prior to that, didn't he flood the whole world, right? We're gonna get to man stealing, right? So you are actually lying on your book. The God of the Bible is a jealous God, right? He's simply he has more human frailties than most modern men. He has to be loved, right? It's not that he loves, he has to love, he has to have you love him. And if you don't love him, he punishes you. Oh, you forget about the Babylon and Syria and the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. You forgot about that. Okay.
and abounding in steadfast love. And so, in fact, if you read the book of Jonah, the beef that Jonah has with God, the reason why he doesn't want to go to Nineveh is because he believes that God is so loving that if he tells the Ninevites to repent and they repent, God is going to forgive them. So fundamentally, we have the picture of God consistently throughout the Bible, both in the Old and New Testaments, as being a God who is rich in love and mercy and abounding in steadfast kindness.
But that's not true, right? And all of this is going to hurt your case when you start talking about slavery again, right? Because Billy is going to leave a stink bomb in the room and you couldn't help yourself, right? You couldn't help yourself, Wes Huff.
And so
Okay, so now we get to talk about slavery, right? So,
we want a God who is just. And just to speak very briefly to the slavery issue, I mean, Leviticus 25 condemns by death the man stealing. So stealing someone and selling them into slavery. And
okay, so you're lying there. If the chat wants me to do it, we can go and talk about Joseph, whose brothers man stole him into slavery. And were they punished by death? No, they were not. Joseph's brothers were not punished by death. And this is the main part of this biblical story. So it's arbitrary and capricious. So we actually have read that book in our enslavement process, right? In our conversion. And we know that Joseph's 12 brothers sold him into slavery, right? Is that true? Okay. Let's see where.
the fact that the 10 Commandments are prefaced with, you are a nation who was slaves. You know, I'm the God of Israel who brought you out of Egypt. So
Okay, so you was a nation that was enslaved, but we have other books, the earlier books that detail how you should treat your slaves, right? So you are leaking. Your book has laws by God, your God, on slavery, out of God's mouth on slavery, how you should treat a slave. I can go into that, but I got other material to go to. But Wes Huff, are you just ignorant or are you just trying to grift us? Your God has passages on slavery. Okay, so you beat your servant, right? As long as you don't beat him to death, right? And if he dies, you just get fined. This is what your God ordained. See, this is the stuff that got us enslaved, right? This rationale, this kind of thinking.
There's a fundamental difference, and there's lots of literature on this. I would encourage people to read my friend Paul Copan's book, Is God a Moral Monster? He's written some excellent stuff. He's also written on Did God Command Genocide in the Old Testament? He's a leading expert in the field of a comparative analysis of ancient Near Eastern war literature. And so there are very coherent explanations for these things, and that slavery within ancient Israel was very, very different from what slavery around the ancient Near East was.
Slavery, nevertheless, but your God encoded it in your book, right? Your God encoded punishment in your book. But go ahead. And see, this is not about me debating Wes Huff. I need not debate anybody that makes points like this, right? These are not points to debate, right? Otherwise, you're going to read into the Bible and change it like Christians, Hebrews, and other groups of people, Hebrew Israelites and other people often do when they can't escape the fact that their God wrote slave laws in their book. Okay.
And on top of that, once again, when abolition movements happen, what's that, sorry, Billy?
I said slavery continued on throughout the Bible with no problems.
Billy's right about that, right? Billy's right about that, but Billy's on the low end right now because he took a whooping, but he is trying to strike back, and Wes Huff is on the offensive, right? So he's going to just push Billy away, right? Watch this.
But it was always undergirded by the fact that this was not the ideal, that this was something that should not be done. And even slavery.
Okay, so you're lying again, because when God gave Canaan to the Israelites, right, and the Israelites came into their land, and the Canaanites fought these intruders, and so the Israelites decided, well, those who did not help them, why should anybody help them? They're coming into someone else's land, even though I don't believe that existed, right? But these people are coming in onto these other people's lands, and so these other people are going to fight intruders into their land. But these people feel that they are chosen based on their text or based on what man is writing, that God is with them and not with the Canaanites. And so forget slavery, simply murder was, how can I say, was on the table. Simply murdering everybody, down to the damn dog, right? To the babies that were suckling on their breasts. Murder was but this is your thinking, Wes Huff. This is how you justify it.
Within ancient Israel was fundamentally different than slavery around the ancient Near East. This is not a...
Yeah, but murder was the same. And murder and slavery was in the slave trade in the United States was the same. So I don't understand. Slavery is different, so you say, during other parts, but when it comes to America, it's just straight chattel, brutal, murderous slavery, right? Working people from sun up to sundown. But you don't get this, Wes Huff. You don't get this. Continue.
This is not a contested fact. You can look at the scholarship of individuals like Wright, who's written extensively on this. He's an ancient Near Eastern ethicist, and there's vast difference between the law codes in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, and something like the Code of Hammurabi, which puts people on a tier system and gives different punishments depending on where they are within society. That's not true in ancient Israel. If you were a king and you stole somebody and you sold them into slavery, they would punish you by death.
Okay, again, Okay, again, what happened to Joseph's brothers? Okay, so you're arbitrary. You're arbitrary. You forgot that. That was a major man-stealing event. Joseph, on his way to supposedly into Egypt, his brothers weren't punished by death. God didn't punish. So what are you talking about, Wes Huff? Continue.
But you
That
steal somebody else's slave. You can't steal somebody else's slave. That's not a good thing to do, right?
uh,
The point that I'm making here, I got to say something before I get out of here, is the Bible is full of contradictions. The um, the biggest problem that we have is we're dealing mentally ill. This entire planet is a mental insane asylum, and I'm talking everyone, every single, all 8 billion, whatever number of people we have now, are all mentally ill. And what I mean is, there's different levels of mentally ill. We all have trauma that we're not
Look at Wes Huff smirking at what Billy is saying, right? Mhm.
dealing with. We all have internal issues. We all have situations that shadow work that needs to be done.
He's grimacing. What he's saying is not true. Yeah.
And so, and some people are at higher levels of mental illness than others. Most of us,
Yeah, slave trade, those who involve themselves in slavery, right, and justifying are mentally ill, right? And using the Bible makes them even more mentally ill.
are functional mental illness people. But when you take a look at the biblical text and you start going through this information and it's the way that it's laid out, it becomes a proponent of more divide and conquer tactics. It becomes a proponent of racism. It becomes a proponent of slavery. It becomes a proponent of all these things that are dark and ill, including murder and killing in the name of God, which has been done how many millions of times. So my thing about the biblical text is it actually authored by the creator of the universe, or is it authored by the dark forces of, maybe, if this Satan is real, Satan himself? And the reason why I say that is because all-knowing, all-loving God, omnipotent and omniscient, that is creating not only this universe, probably most likely multiple universes, because of creative
Okay, let me just speed it along. Okay, let's see.
times, still going on to this very day. To me, that doesn't seem like a very intelligent being, especially a being that knows the beginning and the end. So if you know the beginning and the end, you have a certain level of foreknowledge. You have advanced knowledge that goes beyond. You know what's the ending before the end even occurs. So you set up everything for success. Why? Because a genius solves problems before they happen. And I'm going to drop the mic on that.
with some of that too, I think came back on. Yeah, there's old stuff that it's hard to comprehend, but the thing that again continued to change my life was Jesus, and the core of it was love conquered.
Okay, so now we're back into this Jesus, but we were just talking about slavery. So now we're off topic, right? And we're talking about Jesus's love, and but we're off topic because Huff brought in American slave trade. So let's go. Let's finish.
There's all things. So yeah. Get going.
All right, brother.
Well, we can do a follow
I
up.
really appreciate it, Billy. Thanks so much for interacting.
So yeah, I would,
Yeah,
and
let me
if it doesn't cut out, a follow up on just out of my own curiosity, Wes, of it's these are things, again, like Jesus has changed everything in my studies. I mean, I was young, I was in trouble, I was in jail at age 17. It changed my whole life, and everything Billy was just talking about. Yes, of course, we all know people are broken. It's Jesus that has helped.
Okay, that's your belief. I got that. Can we go back to the slave trade? That's what I'm interested in, right? I'm not talking about how you feel that I respect that. I do respect that, right? There's a lot of people who are in faith and they believe this, and I'm not trying to take away people's faith. I'm more concerned about how Wes Huff deals with this issue, right? So the personal matters. Listen,
And it's sad because that's not
but Wes Huff is
been
going to
separate. Had our
trying to keep him in the
marriage
faith.
counselor, and these are proofs where like I can
I mean, Wes Huff, people can see you. Why you keep playing with the camera? I don't understand. What are what are you, a Barbie doll? I mean, I don't get it.
out throughout my own life, my own experience, and it just so happened as a Muslim, then my wife and I started attending counseling at our church. There were Christian therapists and orchestrating.
I mean,
And
this guy is like literally, like, you know how people play with mirrors and stuff like that, looking at them. I mean,
there's so many different examples I have in my own life of actual proof of it. This is
okay, that's
you
great.
stop doing stupid stuff. I would.
And of your Father in heaven. I mean, I truly
Okay,
believe that's
now.
love and faithfulness. I think we see that carried right over through the testimony of Scripture. I mean, you look at Jesus saying things like, "But I say to you, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you, love your enemies as yourself. Don't expect anything back." He says, "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you."
Yeah, none of that happened during the slave trade. Africa was invaded for human capital, right? So, what you may say your Christ believed is different than what actually happened in the world, right? So you want to keep going back to these statements in a way earlier time period, but you want to leave out what actually happened in history.
You may be children of your Father in heaven. I mean, I truly believe that Christianity is verifiably true. And I would really encourage listeners, dig into these things. Not to be too self-serving, but I have a lot of historical information on my website, wesleyhuff.com.
Okay. You have lots of information. That's fine. There is probably some truth of your religion. Uh, there is probably some truth that your Jesus was a historical person, uh, a rebel, someone who may have fought against Rome, right? Who went against what was happening in Rome. That's fine. That got nothing to do with slavery, Christian slavery, right? Has nothing to do with the people that followed it. The real test of something is if the followers continuously follow those tenets. Uh, um, Wes Huff, the problem with you is that you are trying to justify Christianity. But let's continue.
Oh yeah,
I've been
information too.
Yeah, we've been doing a series with
That's good.
and so
That's good.
He's the guy, Wes, like I have something going on with my family, whatever. I've watched him get a homeless guy, literally them, and all the.
That's not my goal. My goal is, and I do this with Christian videos too. Sometimes people say a little bit crazy things with the biblical. Look at the Bible, and we look at what it says. That you have these early eyewitness testimonies of this person, Jesus Christ. I think those.
There are a lot of shows going on. There's what eyewitnesses. The only eyewitnesses that you have is in your own book. I can respect that because it's in your own book, but outside of your book, you have Seneca, you have Philo, you have where are the external sources? But I'm not trying to knock your belief in Christ. I'm trying to knock the fact that you said that the abolitionists were Christian. That's the reason why I'm doing this video, right? And forgetting that it was Christianity itself that caused Christian views that was the moral impetus of slavery
are verifiable. And we can say what we have now is what the original authors wrote. Those original authors, they are eyewitnesses of those events. And Jesus, he says audacious things. He claims to be God himself, and then he predicts his own death and resurrection, and he does it. And people who rise from the dead have...
Okay. All right. Fine. You can't prove any of that except for it's in your book.
Change the way that you live your life. And I think
as humans and
all right.
disorders, whether they would have had, but even our professor, who, by the way, didn't claim to have...
Okay, let me just skip
that. Historical text is the honesty it conveys concerning its heroes. And a primary theme of biblical scripture is that the greatest individuals spoken about in it, through its pages, are broken and flawed. You know, even just thinking
like Billy would say, Jesus say back to him 3 times, and who we truly are. But I understand how you're able to
and fall, and then famous psalm, you know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. At the psalm immediately before it, Psalm 22, starts off like this: my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you...
Yeah, that's what the Africans said on the slave ship, right? That's what the African said on the slave ship, right? Why have their belief systems forsaken them? It didn't help, right? But the slave masters, they said something different. They weren't forsaken. It seems like God allowed safe passages for the majority of the slave ships, right? So
go far from me. And you know what? The one thing I really moves me about the God of the Bible is that the same God who sees the person who says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and the person who says, my God, why have you forsaken me? The same God sees those as equally valid forms of worship. And that, Mark, I don't want
all day about our never do on this show. People know continually does, or the right? People who I know, tons, and you know, by the way, he stayed on 20 minutes past it, just to let everyone know he wasn't like, I'm leaving this.
Okay.
Get to do what I do, even to begin.
Okay, so I don't care about that. Let's just go back to the very beginning, and then I am going to add some other commentary. So let's listen to how he started this.
Within scripture, and this is why all the abolition movements throughout history have only been Judeo-Christian movements. There's never been an abolition movement that wasn't Christian. And actually, there's the recent work by historian Tom Holland, not the Spider-Man actor, different Tom Holland, but his recent Dominion highlights this fact very well. This is not a Christian, but in it, he shows that going right back into the antiquity with the Cappadocian Fathers was the first abolition movement, and then into the British and the American abolition movements. These were fundamentally Christian movements ran by Christians because of the idea that when Paul, who wrote that letter to Ephesians, says, in Christ there is no slave nor free, he's breaking down those barriers. So in Ephesians, when he says...
And what about the same ones that caused the slave trade? So I am just going to read my commentary, and I'll just leave it where it is, and I'll open up the line. But this is the same type of white supremacist thinking. He may not think it is, but it is extremely problematic in the way that he talked about slavery as if millions of people did not either die directly or perished along the way, or the after effects are continuously perishing because of racism and discrimination. So let's just close this down and let's read into some of the other texts. So let's close this down, for example. Okay, so I'm going to read into some commentary, and I'll take my screen off and see what's going on. Thanks. Okay, so see what some people are saying. Born Dog, I agree, he humbled in HOK debate against Brother Jabari or Sar Ka. He gets humbled. That's correct. What's Tony saying? Bro, are we mad at Wes for being white or because he beat Billy? No, Tony, we're not mad at him for being white, and we're not mad at him for beating Billy. We're mad at his statements. I'm concerned about his statements about slavery. I hope that clears that up. We need Wes Huff in the HOK debate. He needs to get that Richard Carrier treatment. Um, yes, he needs to show his sources. Certainly that. Um, but I think it would be very brutal if he was in the HOK debate. Um, I don't care about. Okay, so eyes witness of Jesus Christ. Okay, what is this? Billy is easy to cook, right? What's this right here? He's white, Christian. What we expect him to say. Um, I don't think that all white people, white Christians, talk like that. I think that he does. So I'm examining what he said based on his analysis. Okay, so let's just see. Um, okay, so here's my statements. And then after that, I can open it up and see what you have to say. Uh, it's the holiday season, if you have, your support helps keep this channel going. I haven't been able to speak in about a week and a half because I've been ill, but I will put up my Cash App. But let's get to this part right here. So let's see, Billy's Easy Cook. All right. Wes Huff's sentiment on slavery and abolition is dangerous and unfortunate. Huff, in his Christian apologetic view, made a major error in dealing with slavery by stating that the abolitionist view was Christian-led. The abolition of slavery in Britain and the United States came about not because of Christian morality, but geopolitical politics and Britain's understanding that the colonies were using Africans in its defense and in the Americas. There were additional factors such as industrialization in northern and southern economies, right? So we have to understand that the people that want to talk about slavery, like Wes Huff, actually knows about slavery, right? So, and they should know how what the thinking is of the British for involving themselves in the abolitionist movement. It wasn't because they felt for the kind souls of the African. No, it was because they figured out in their 13 colonies in Britain, I'm sorry, the 13 colonies in the Caribbean, outside of the Caribbean, that those groups of people were arming themselves, arming their slaves to fight for them, and so they was losing control of the 13 colonies that's outside of the United States, right? That's one of the factors that led the British to the abolitionist movement. And America has another issue. America's issue is this tension between the North and the South and industrialization and the planetary economy. No one really cared about the African soul, right? Abolitionist sentiments for the African was really no different than the slave master sentiment. They were certainly still not Europeans, certainly less than Europeans, right? The issue for them was largely economies and war. Wes Huff's assertion that the abolition movement was exclusively Christian-led is a significant oversimplification that ignores the complex interplay of economic, political, and social factors that led to the abolition of slavery in Britain and the United States. While Christian activists played a role in the abolitionist movement, their influence was far from the sole or even primary driving force behind the eventual abolition of slavery. So Wes Huff's biblical stuff, you could take that and leave that on toilet tissue. The abolition of the slave trade and slavery in the British Empire was deeply intertwined with the geopolitical and economic considerations. As James Walvin notes, the Atlantic slave trade was not merely an exotic offshoot of the mainstream British history, but like slavery itself, it was part of the warp and the weft of the British economy. Walvin, 2007, the shift from Britain being the dominant slave trader to becoming a fierce opponent of the slave trade was not simply a matter of moral awakening, but it's a complex strategic decision. So it shows that Wes Huff, where you may study biblical, how can I say, handwriting or or what you do. You have no knowledge on the American slave trade. And it doesn't, I don't think that you are, I think that you are Canadian, I think. And so you don't have, we could talk about things like Lord Dunmore and the abolition of or the exporting of Africans into Canada, but that was for warfare. There was nothing moral about that. Economic factors played a crucial role in the British decision to abolish slavery, as the authors of a CPR study points out. Growth in Europe took off during the century when the slave trade and overseas slavery in European colonies reached their greatest scale. However, by the earliest 19th century, the profitability of slavery was declining. The sugar economy in the West Indies was facing bankruptcy, partly due to the Haitian Revolution, and new fields of investment were opening up in India and China. And so the rebellions and the plantations economy was becoming far more expensive, and so it wasn't the fact that Christians were interested in freeing slaves. It was the fact of the matter is that African enslaved were freeing themselves with great cost to Europeans. Moreover, the British government's decision to abolish slavery was influenced by the fear of slave uprising in the colonies, not because of Christianity. It was because of the fear of slave uprisings in the colonies. As the British Britannica entry on the Slavery Abolition Act states, the persistent struggles of enslaved Africans and a growing fear of slave uprisings among plantation owners were another major factor in the passage of the act. Britannica 2016. In the United States, the abolition of slavery was similarly driven by a complex set of factors beyond Christian morality. The industrialization of the North created an economic system that did not rely on slave labor, leading to a growing divergence between the northern and southern economies. This economic divide, rather than purely moral considerations, was a significant factor in the tensions that ultimately led to the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, or the ending of slavery. While it is true that some Christian groups, particularly Quakers and Methodists, were active in the abolitionist movement, it is oversimplification to characterize Mr. Huff. The entire movement is Christian-led. As the BBC notes, based upon different interpretations of the Bible and their own moral views, Christians of the 18th century were divided on their opinions of slavery. Many Christians, especially in the American South, used biblical arguments to justify slavery. Furthermore, the role of African Christians in the slave rebellions and the abolitionist movements is often overlooked. Now we get a chance to talk about African Christians. As the BBC reports, many slave insurrections, such as those led by Sam Sharp in Jamaica and Nat Turner in the United States, were led by individuals of strong Christian faith who reinterpreted Christian teachings to support their struggles for freedom. So it was not the Christianity that you are talking about, this great love, this God's love, and this Jesus stuff. It was using biblical concepts of war, right, for Africans themselves to justify an exodus, fighting against their slave masters. So they read into the Bible what they needed to read into the Bible for their own liberation, but it wasn't because of anything that you're talking about as far as Christianity is concerned. They were using some Old Testament verses and things like that to justify their first separation from white Christianity. Slaves, obey your earthly masters. That's not what Nat Turner did, right? That's not what Sharp and those other did. They used the conflicting, contradictory verses of the Bible to free themselves, as any sensible group of people would do. Use it as a tool. right? In conclusion, Huff's assertion that the abolitionist movement was Christian-led is a significant oversimplification that fails to account for the complex economic, political, and social factors that led to the abolition of slavery. While Christian activists played a role in the movement of the abolition of slavery in Britain and in the United States, was primarily driven by geopolitical considerations, changing economic realities, and a growing divergence between industrialization and plantation-based economies. This more nuanced understanding history changes simplistic narratives, and in my mind, white supremacist Christian apologist thinking. And it shows that a person can be a doctor, a PhD, expert in a particular narrow craft, but that does not make it makes him sometimes. It shows that he can be ignorant in the subjects that he did not study. So Wes Huff is ignorant on the slave trade, and what he said was oversimplification and wrong. Now, let me just see what my chat has to say while I continue to read. I keep hearing this thing about he's white Christian, what we expect him to say. That's the point. That's the point. What I could expect him to say is what he just said, but what we're talking about is the reality of what actually happened versus what he said and his misuse of the Bible. So just because a person says something and we expect him to be, what I'm saying is that he can't break free as a scholar from his Christian apologist self to understand and to be reliable when he talks about history. Let me see what else people have to say. Okay, Mount C says, Wes jumps in and out of scholarship and apologetics. His race is irrelevant. He's weak on scholarship. And that's what Mount C, and that is what I'm saying. I'm not trying to make this about him being white, right? I'm making this about that he is an apologetic, and he's very weak on understanding, since he brought up slavery and he had a rationale for it. And I'm just trying to say he is not somebody to listen to when it comes to trying to apply some old biblical stuff that we didn't even get to the point of asking him to validate any of the things that he's talking about with Jesus. What Jesus said this? Jesus said that? Jesus wrote something? What did he write? I don't understand. I mean, I know Paul wrote, right? I know John wrote, right? I know that there are gospels from people who never even met Christ, right? Okay, I know that there's contradictory stories, but you're going to come in front of us and try to think that we are still so converted into the slave Bible that we actually believe that these things happen. I mean, you can believe it by faith, but factually you can't prove any of this. Where's the gospel? Where's the gospel of his mother? Who's the most reliable person on his whole life? Last time I checked, his disciples lived with him only for 3 years. And they built it from what they call witnesses, but nobody knew he was important. When did they know he was important? Right? Miracles? Right? Is that what you do? There's miracles all up and down the Hellenistic period. This person that you're talking about, Christ, he's a Hellenistic figure. This isn't a Hellenistic world. You go down the street, there's somebody dealing with Jupiter. You go down the street, there's somebody dealing with Serapis. You go down the street, there's somebody dealing with Mithra. You go down the street, there's Roman gods, right? Roman people, Roman generals and emperors that are gods. Like, this is the world that that they lived in. He's just one figure of it. But you're going to cherry pick and act like all those other beliefs aren't valid, but your belief in this one particular person. What about all the other messianic figures in the Hebrew tradition? You're going to pick one? No, that is you being apologetic, right? That's how you are picking and choosing and cherry picking history, other figures, right? Show me what Philo has to say about Jesus. Show me what Seneca the Younger has to say about Jesus. Show me who is reliable outside of the Bible, right, about your person. Now, I can accept that you can believe it. I can respect that you can believe that, but don't bring that and use any of that BS as a rationale for the abolitionist movement. So yeah, I'm on my rant. So let me finish. So, biblical justifications for slavery. Contrary to Huff's claim, numerous biblical passages were used to justify slavery throughout history. The Old Testament contains several passages that explicitly permit and regulate slavery. For instance, Leviticus 25:44 to 46 states, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them as slaves for life. This passage was frequently cited by pro-slavery advocates to argue that God permitted the ownership of slaves. Similarly, the story of Noah cursing Ham in Genesis 9:25 to 27 was twisted to justify the enslavement of Africans. As Noah Ray explains in its boiled down popular version known as the Curse of Ham, Canaan was dropped from the story. Ham was made black and his descendants were made Africans. Time, 2018. Don't argue with me, argue with time. In the New Testament passages such as Ephesians 6:5 through 9 and Colossians 3:22, 4 to 1 were used to argue that slavery was a divinely ordained institution. These passages instruct slaves to obey their masters, which was interpreted by some as an endorsement of slavery. Reform Journal 2023. Let me see what else people are saying. Peace, Harris. How are you? Good to see you. What is this? Igbian Organics. Wow. I'm not going to time out anybody, but if you have something constructive to say, please say. Be an adult. Be an adult. I don't understand. Are you trying to protect Huff? Are you saying that Huff is right? Or are you just trying to minimize what I'm saying for what purpose? I don't understand. What else we got here? In the New Testament passages, okay, I read that. Christianity in the transatlantic slave trade. Huff's statement also overlooks the significant role that Christianity played in the transatlantic slave trade. As the Equal Justice Initiative reports, starting in the 15th century when European powers initiated contacting and commercial activity with sub-Saharan Africa and continued throughout the following centuries, organized religion played a leading role in developing, supporting, and legislating the transatlantic slave trade. So your abolitionist Christian-led goes out the window because we haven't dealt with the fact that Christianity initiating the slave trade. Christian institutions not only embraced the enslavement of Africans, but actively participated in it. The church itself. The church used the slave trade to extend its influence with European enslavers, baptizing millions of enslaved people. This involvement was justified by the belief that spreading Christianity was a divine duty that superseded concerns and human trafficking. And at the same time, ripping these African people from their names, their identities, their languages, disconnecting them from their family, from their children, working them from sun up to sundown, and then blessing them with incense, right? And baptizing them, and circumcising them, because you think it was a greater good for your religion, because you had to well, how can I say, civilize the savage. So Wes Huff, you're oversimplified. Just stay with reading textual records. You can jump out every now and then if you want to critique somebody when they want to talk about a particular religious text, but keep your ass out of the African slave trade, right? Just keep your lying, oversimplifying, condescending, ignorant as out of the slave trade. Don't tell me about your loving, abounding God, and that Jesus and inherently men are broken. That's not what we want to hear. We want what is important is that you can have your faith and you can believe in it wholly with all your might and soul. Fine, but please, please don't try to apply it to reality, right? In a conversation that is going to really upset descendants of the African slave trade. Now that's not what you intended, but the problem is that you didn't even think about it. Historical context and critique. Let me see what else my chat is saying. Anything else? Okay. Jews created the curse of Ham, or the Hamitic. Speak on that. It's part of those traditions. Some rabbis, in fact, did it. Did that in that particular myth. So we don't have. It comes out of the same type of tradition, right? The Christian tradition comes out of the Hebrew tradition, and so you have the Leviticus, and you have Deuteronomy, you have Exodus, and so you have these great injustices of humans based on chosenness that the Christians inherit as they have their own viewpoint of it. The Hebrew groups of people in North Africa, as they escaped the Romans and found themselves in North Africa, they ultimately would find themselves subjects of the Arabs, the invading Arabs populations, and all of these racial constructs come into play during that new movement. But Christianity was, except for in Ethiopia, in East Africa, was pretty much banned throughout the rest of Africa, but except for in what we going to say Alexandria and Ethiopia. And I'm going to do another show, but I can deal with the murderous Coptics, the murderous Coptic Christians, right, in Alexandria during the Alexandria riots. And I could talk about Hypatia, and I could talk about how the Coptic Christians, these are the first groups of Christians in there, how they murdered during the riots, how they murdered Africans who believed in their own traditional faith inside Alexandria in Egypt, forcing these riots for the Romans to take their side and to shut down what they call the traditional religious centers of worship for the Christian worship. So we could talk about that. So, but we could talk about how these Coptic Christians in their monastic movement, right, became terror organizations and ran to the desert and did raids on the other people, terrorizing them, and then ran back into the desert. We could talk about those groups of people uh, uh, converting African temples, right, into churches, structures that they didn't even know how to build. They didn't know how to build. They didn't do any of that. They just basically moved into African temples and throughout ages and ages old archaeology and culture into the streets, and just to put Coptic churches, Coptic crosses on the building and to cleanse it and sanctify it. Right. This was happening in Africa. Right. In murdering the population of the indigenous population. Nothing different than what happened in that the early settlers did to the Native Americans, and then nothing different than what happened in the Jim Crow. That's Coptic Christianity. It's the same old thing, right? So what happened in Jim Crow and Black Wall Street and Tulsa, right, where these groups of people are watching these cultures in America that have been devastated by slavery. Watch them pick up their shoes and then prey on them, right? And take everything from them, and then create eminent domain, and and then find themselves in the same places, in the same villages or the same communities that African Americans once were, right? To make it their own, right? These are white Christians doing this, right? All throughout the South. We could talk about Seneca Village, where Africans were fleeing from from let's say downtown, because they was kicked all down from Wall Street to Brooklyn to Weeksville, and then kicked all the way from Lower Manhattan, found themselves in Seneca Village, and then they get preyed on, lose Seneca Village, and find themselves in Harlem, right? And so it gets to a point where that Black people, Black Americans, don't own anything past 110th Street. Don't own anything in New York past 110th Street, right? So your type of analysis, Huff, right, is lacking when it comes to slavery and views on slave trade. The abolitionists, at the same time, and maybe I'll get to this, the way that the abolitionists thought about Black people was no different than the slave master, right? Their sentiments were they were not white, they were not Christian, they were dirty, and they were savages. So your Christianity did not cure anything when it has to do with humanity. Now, so I'm going to lose my viewers. People going to say, I'm telling you the facts. If there are other facts, when I open up the line, you come on and show me those other facts. Let's see what I got. Oh, thanks. Thanks. I appreciate it, Harris. Any donation is appreciated, because I'm showing you that in the wake, in the fallout of this Huff and Billy situation, there were some other issues that just wasn't seen. The minute that he started talking about slavery and bringing in some old biblical and Jesus and concepts and trying to apply it to the slave trade, it's the same thing that got us into the slave trade. Let's see what else. So let's say, Bino, what's going on, my good brother? Bino, how you doing? Name one Jew who was an abolitionist. you can't. They were anti-abolitionists. We can talk about. We can certainly talk about that. Um, let's see. Historical context and critique. Hubb's oversimplification fails to acknowledge the complex historical reality of slavery in Christian societies. As the BBC notes, historical records show that Islam and Christianity played an important role in enslavement in Africa. The Arab-controlled trans-Saharan slave trade helped to institutionalize slave trading on the continent. Moreover, the connection between, and when people do have to understand that before the Arabs became the Arabs, that they in their revolution, many of them themselves were part of the Byzantine Christian world, right? And they revolted against that. They had a right to revolt against that, but they used the same sentiments, right? As they built themselves up, they had no mercy on the people that they felt that were pagans. But their situation was different. If for a while, if you converted to Islam for a while, then you would be saved. That's Aslam Teslam, surrender and be saved. If you took the Shahada for a while, but it was Al-Mansur who attacked Timbuktu, right? Who then broke the sacred concept of if you became a Muslim, you would not be enslaved by Muslims. The Berber Al-Mansur did that by attacking Timbuktu with British cannons and British guns, and Al-Mansur wanting to talk to the Sultana, Queen Elizabeth, that's what he called the Sultana, that his armies could be her armies as they attack those people in the New World, right, to make it Moorish and British. It's important to note that some Christians did oppose slavery, particularly during the abolitionist movement of the 18th and 19th century. Mind you, think about how this is written. It's important to note that while some Christians did oppose slavery, particularly during the abolitionist movement of the 18th and 19th century, meaning that the abolitionist movement was what it was, and that there were all types of people involved in the abolitionist movement, and it wasn't a Christian abolitionist movement per se, and it was not led, so that you were wrong. This opposition was not universal within Christianity, as Michael Paul points out, that this has in fact been the Christian view throughout history. It's only in the last 150 to 200 years that the tide of Christian opinion has shifted on slavery. Hubb's statement about slavery in the Bible is a gross oversimplification that ignores the complex historical relationship between Christianity and slavery by failing to acknowledge the biblical passages used to justify slavery and the role of Christian institutions in the transatlantic slave trade. Huff presents a sanitized view of history in his little comments that does not align with the historical record. A more nuanced understanding of history is crucial for addressing the ongoing legacy of slavery and racism in the Christian communities and society at large. My point is, Huff, you did nothing to help, but what you did is show us how your Christian apologetic views failed in making a truthful analysis about the slave trade, how your overly simplistic apologetic view is not a tool for us to understand the any of the slave trades, any of them, right? So let's go on. The Spanish Catholic and Protestant Church involvement in the slave trade, and I'm almost finished. See, the problem is, in a lot of these conversations that we have on YouTube, there are very few that I find that talk about African American history and African American culture, the slave trade, in a way in which tells the truth. I see that there's a lot of ignorance, even among my own people who have not studied the slave trade, right? And so it's easy for religion to come into play as if religion is actually history. Oftentimes, religion is not history. It's a culture. It's a set of rules for a group of people who convert to that religion. That nothing is important in that religion except for their God and their culture. So real history is not really relevant. And so we are weak, and my programming will suffer. My programming suffer because we have a lot of Black Americans or Africans living in America, or African descent, or people that might call themselves Black people, or whatever they call themselves, that's weak on their history. How do I know that they're weak on history? They could tell you about Jesus. They could tell you about Joseph. They could tell you about Isaac. They could tell you about Moses, right? They could tell you about Zaphanas. They can read scriptures back and forth, right? They could talk about Adam, and they could talk about Eve, and they could talk about all of these, all pharaohs that they can't even name. They could talk about all of this. But if you ask these people to tell you who their grandma is, or their great grandma, or their great-grand, they might have a big mom in the house, but ask these same people to start talking about their own personal history of how their own family overcame racism and prejudice post-slavery in America, right? They can't tell you. You ask them who their grandparents are. Both sides. Nah. Great-grandparents. Oh, definitely not. Great-great-grandparents. No, they're ignorant to it. So we're dealing with a population of people, right, who have been fractured from slavery and Jim Crow, who don't even know their own families, right? That's what we're dealing with. Let me just finish this up. The involvement of Christian churches in the transatlantic slave trade is a complex and troubling chapter in history. This paper examines the roles of the Spanish Catholic Church and the Protestant denominations in facilitation and justifying the enslavement of Africans, with a focus on papal bulls, decrees, and biblical justification. The Catholic Church and the papal bulls. The Catholic Church played a significant role in sanctioning the slave trade through the papal bulls issued in the 15th century. Pope Nicholas V, 1452 bull, Dom de Versus, authorized King Alfonso V of Portugal to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, the dukedoms, the counties, the principalities, the dominions, the possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit. The bull proposed moral and legal justifications for the Portuguese to exchange in the slave trade along the African coast. In 1455, Nicholas V issued Romances Pontifex, which further expanded Portuguese rights to colonize non-Christian lands and enslave native peoples. These papal decrees laid the foundations for European colonizations and the transatlantic slave. They framed slavery as a means of spreading Christianity, with Pope Nicholas V stating the desire for whoever concerns the integrity and spread of the faith for which Christ our God shed his blood shall flourish in the virtuous souls of the faithful. Hey, Smash, how you doing? Thanks for hanging out with me. The Spanish involvement. The Spanish monarchy, closely tied to Catholic Church, used these papal bulls to justify their own colonial ambitions. In 1493, Pope Alexander VI issued Inter Terra, which establishes the rights of Christian nations to colonize new discovered lands. This bull played a crucial role in legitimizing Spanish conquest in the Americas and the subsequent enslavement of the indigenous people and imported African slave trade. The Protestant church involvement. And I can go on, the Protestant church involvement, the English involvement, and biblical justification. I can go on and on. My point of this whole program is what we miss from Huff, Wes Huff's oversimplification concepts of trying to mix in some Jesus concepts and Paul concepts with slavery, and then mention slavery as just an after fact, but mentioning slavery shows his ignorance, his non-caring of the African slave trade, right? His Christian apologetic self when it comes to the slave trade, meaning not really wanting to engage in the concept of the Christian or religious effects of the slave trade. The problem with him is dealing with a subject that he shouldn't deal with, and oversimplifying it. And our people who are watching, who are watching these channels, have to understand how to stop these type of analysis at its place. So I can go on, but I am really not going to. I just wanted to add on what I felt that Wes Huff, in having this conversation with Billy, also had a conversation with a host, and then it becomes into this whole Christian kumbaya. Sorry, I have had a bad cold session, but having the mitigated goal to bring up slavery. So I have to stop and take a drink of water. I'm going to open up the chat line. I know it's getting late, and if it's not too much, then we'll close. I apologize. This is the most I've spoken in about 5 days. So let me. So let's just talk about the problems. I mean, on Smash Rockwell's show, we have been dealing with not just we seem to have taken a break from dealing with African history and dealing with other apologetics. So on his channel, we was just dealing with Wesley Muhammad as being an apologetic. Nobody really wants to deal with the invasion of Africa, especially these religious groups of people. You know, what they want to do is say they want to play identity theft. Wesley Muhammad and them, well, these were the black Arabs, the black Quraysh, the as to justify as to so you're black by how? Skin color? Right? But you don't have no affinity for black people. You have affinity for your religion. I don't have a problem with that, but don't sell it like it's something else than having an affinity with your religion. We have another group of people, the Hebrews. All of a sudden now, the Hebrews are black. The Hebrews are black, right? I had a good example of a quote, and I think it's in another show that I'm working on. Is it from Wesley Muhammad, or it was from, where was it? Where somebody talked about Oh, it was from Vince Bantu. Vince Bantu read some on him being an apologetic. He read some quote talking about I'm black and I'm beautiful. Um, I'm black and I'm beautiful. And to say uh, the that was he saying all Hebrews were saying that they was black and beautiful, or was they talking about a particular woman whose brothers made her work in the field, and she grew dark by the she grew dark by the sun, hmm. and so she was talking about that yes, she's black and beautiful, but that's not because she had anything connected with Africa, had anything connected with African culture. It just means that she was dark by the sun and that she appreciated herself. But that didn't mean that all the Hebrews were black or all Christians was black. And here's another PhD, Dr. Vince Bantu, doing craziness like this. Maybe I can find that quote. Let me stop sharing and see if I can find that quote uh, where mm, where just because there is some uh, section where in the Bible where someone says that they're black and beautiful, uh, uh, and that so what I'm just trying to say is that these people are culture thieves. They're culture vultures, right? So they want to take aspects of African culture to hide to hide who they are, and they are something different than people from the continent of Africa. Let me just see if let's see if I can find that. Otherwise, I have to drink some water and I'll open up the lines and see what you got to say. Let's see. So I'm gonna open up the lines while I look for this. So the only time that these people want to be black is just to get more followers. That's all, right? To pull other groups of people into their religions. People who don't know, who not study their religion. So it's all right to be black. But once you're in that religion, then you find yourselves taken out of your African culture. Copy. And some people might say, well, Brother Reggie, you're racist. Uh, if you could show that I'm racist, I'll listen. StreamYard. If you could show that I'm racist, I appreciate it, because I have a vantage point, because I'm an advocate of African people whose stories would never be told, whose many of them on the bottom of the sea or buried in ditches, who worked sun up and sundown, and I'm advocate of them. And you're not going to cover it up with peanut butter and jelly over your biblical beliefs. You are invited. And I'm just saying what Wes Huff did was dangerous. It just reminds me of 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 how white supremacy actually works. Song of Solomon, you're absolutely right about that. It is the Song of Solomon, and let me just bring that up. Thank you so much, and see if I can. Let me see, Song of Solomon, and I'll bring it up. Song of Solomon. I don't know if Smash was covering Vince Bantu, or I had just jumped on it. But let me just bring up the Song of Solomon and show you where it says I'm black and beautiful, and show you how someone like even Vince Bantu misuses that. Song of Solomon. Okay, Jose Francis. Hey, how you doing, sir?
How are you doing? That's the question I should be asking you.
I'm suffering with this sore throat, this cough, but this is something that I actually have to do. Um, Song of Solomon 1, 5 through 6. This is something that I have to do. I have to look at Wes Huff's um, being who he is.
Just so you know,
Um,
just so you know, Solomonic TV is me, by the way. Huh?
you said what?
Solomonic TV is me, by the way.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. So
That's
thank
what
you for for the source. So let me bring it up since you brought it up, since you gave me it. So thank you for your research.
I don't think I could even. Oh, I could share.
I'm gonna bring it up.
Oh,
Okay, so the Songs of Solomon, which is Solomon's, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine. Because of the Savior of thy good ointments, thy name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee. Draw me, we will run after thee. The king has brought me into his chambers. We will be glad and rejoice in thee. We will remember thy love more than wine. The upright love thee. 5. I am black, but comely. O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Well, curtains of Solomon had black hair, the tents of Kedar. I am black, but comely. O ye daughters of Jerusalem, let not upon me because I am, look not upon me because I am black, because the sun, now they're honest, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept. Tell me, O thou whom my soul lovest, when thou feedest where they makest thy flock to rest at noon, for which should I be as one that turneth aside by the flocks of the companion? So if thou knowest not, O thou fairest among women, go the way forth by sorry, move down. My point of this is that just because you mention the word black in the Bible means that the Hebrew people were black. Miss me with that. Look upon me because look not upon me because I am black, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard have I not kept. She's complaining. Tell me, O thou whom my soul lovest, where thy feet is, where thou makest thy flock to rest at noon, for why should I be as one of the turners aside by the flocks of thy companions? If thou know not, O thou fairest among women, go the way forth by the footsteps of the flock and feed thy kids beside the shepherd's temper. I have compared thee, O my love, to a company of horses in the Pharaoh's chariots. What does that have to do, Vince Bantu, but the black is beautiful? What does that have to do with that? But this is the con. So if you could talk for a minute, and anybody else interested, I will let them. Please hit the link, and I'll be right back.
you mean
And
that's
maybe
it?
I'll find Vince Bantu's BS. Go ahead.
The Finns battle that got beat up by Jabari.
Um,
He got
Interesting. Interesting. I'm not going to say that Vince Bantu got beat up by Jabari. I have to get some water. I'll talk to you about that. One second.
I wonder what you guys think about the show, man. Let me just put a little banter in here while Reggie's gone. Anybody else interested? You can hit the link, man. Don't be scared to hit the link. Do not be scared to hit the link.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm drinking Cersei. You know what Cersei is, right?
That's a. Is it like a fruit juice?
No, Cersei's a herb, a Caribbean herb for mucus.
Okay.
All right, Sonic, peace to you. Let me see if I can find where Vince Bantu was talking and showing you how he was gaslighting.
That was recently, right?
Huh? Oh yeah. Well, I think it was pretty recently.
I try to jump on a panel, but like they smell me coming, boy.
Let me see Vince Bantu. Okay, so yeah, so he did this the other day.
Yeah, probably about.
Let me pull this up.
Or is that not the same thing I'm looking at? That's probably not the same thing.
This is So let me see.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
So he does this show connection with African spirituality, witchcraft, and pagan holidays. So somewhere here, he gets fly, Vince Bantu.
But you know he preaches some kind of weird Christianity, right?
Okay.
It's muted, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Or is it? It have no song in the Reggie.
You don't hear the sound?
No.
Okay, so great. So let me just set this up again and present. Now, Vince Bantu is a very dynamic speaker, by the way. He's very dynamic, but you got to be a scholar to understand how to deal with Vince Bantu. So here we go right here. So I'm going to scroll through some pieces of what he's talking about, and let's see what he's got to say. He's got to throw in African spirituality, witchcraft, and pagan holidays. So when he means pagan, he means non-Christian. So let me just scroll through this to give you a taste of how he spins this. Let me see. Okay, so is this where he talks about? Okay, skip. Because I want to get to the section where he actually talks about
as like particularly helpful. That's why I identify as a Christian, and I'm a pastor and a member at a non-denominational church. Myself personally, I mean, we still have a leadership and authority and statement of faith, but but I'm not saying that my brothers and sisters in Christ that are part of denominations are like in sin or anything like that.
Okay.
To that, but even somebody who grew up in slavery understood there's a difference between what this Bible says and what I'm seeing practiced around me. And that's what was at the beginning, at the birth of the Black church. And so anyway, I think that that's an important distinction that we have to make. But we have to be on mission, because again, you cannot escape culture. Culture is the air you breathe.
Okay, that's fine.
To help us be before courts. Don't be surprised when
Have you seen the debate that he did?
I'm gonna try to get to this point where he talks about Solomon. I think they put it on the screen. And Vince Mantle
mentioned this in the documentary Unspoken, which was incredible, by the way.
He is Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three persons, one God. They're not three different gods, they're one God, and yet he is Father, he is Son, he is Spirit all at the same time. He is diverse, but he is also unified. The Spirit's not the Son's not the Father's not the Spirit, and yet they are all God. And so for us to be unified, like God is unified, we have to be different, and difference is a good thing. It's not something that should be avoided.
Okay. I'm gonna have Morpheus on the show, and we're gonna deal with this because if Jesus is God, then he's responsible for this the slave edicts in the Bible for what's in Exodus. And so now by you saying that says that now Jesus is much more culpable. He's God himself. So he sets up the slave laws. So Jesus sets up the slave laws. See, I want to find if I can find this black is beautiful type of thing. Give me a second. Go ahead. I think they're going to post it on the screen when he talks about it. Yeah. Let's see how he gets fly. And he's a fighter. He's a mixed martial arts fighter. So I don't want to get on his bad side. Let me see what happens.
God uses the things that the world says is foolish, and he uses it.
Dr. Vince Mantle,
This is going crazy. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I feel really good. Pull that Bible verse back up.
I ain't gonna lie.
I feel good about that, man. I'm black and beautiful.
Okay, listen to this BS right here. So he gonna say he feel good. Let me set this whole thing up. The host is gonna say, oh, he feels good about what Vince Bantu got him. Let's go. Listen to this.
Because that's really what Luke was trying to say, that this man was black. Because in that time, what we now call Ethiopia was not called Ethiopia. It was called Axum. And Greek-speaking people used to just refer to anywhere south of Egypt as Ethiopia, as in the land of black people. Sometimes they even called India Ethiopia. Like somebody would go to India and say, oh, look at all these Ethiopians. It just meant black person. It just meant somebody with dark skin. And so there again, you have the Bible referencing blackness and acknowledging. Luke was acknowledging that this gospel went through to him. He went rejoicing and brought the gospel to the area. The Bible is full of positive acknowledgments of blackness. Numbers.
Okay, so he's very fast talking, very dynamic, very slick until you fact check.
Chapter 12, Moses' Cushite wife. And
okay, Moses had a Cushite wife. Is that positive? Right? Moses himself was supposed to be raised in the house of the pharaohs. That's an African civilization. So it's in Africa. Vince Bantu.
Miriam and Aaron were actually it says they were disparaging her. They said they were looking down on Moses, and it says because of his Cushite wife. And so now they have an issue with him having a black.
Yeah, that was the problem. The real issue of that culture, that those people who his brothers and sisters, they're showing their true colors, that they did not like black people, right? But the Hebrews said that they're black, but Aaron and the sister are getting on Moses about having a black wife, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Black wife, and God intervenes and actually turns their skin white with leprosy, and as a way of vindicating them. And so again,
so God turns their skin white because, first of all, you got to believe that. Vince, my man, do you really believe that? You really believe that? You're just playing with us. You're just using Bible fables, Santa Claus type of thing, heat miser and freeze miser on us. Are you really trying to do that, Vince? Are you really? Right? Are you really? But you have an out of Africa religion. Okay, go ahead. Let's go.
The other thing I want to point out about this is that black people, black skin is actually the only skin color mentioned in the Bible. You don't.
Black skin color is the only skin color mentioned in the Bible. We'll check that.
See any other mention of like white people or brown or yellow or red, any other people, any other racial category that we use today.
Yeah, but we have the ancient Africans who are talking about groups of people out of Africa and showing them, right? We have Aden's hymn, right? So we don't need the Bible, Vince. What we can do is we could just look at history and look at the African texts where they do separate people because of their skin color, right? And the people that you're talking about, Vince, in the Levant, those are the miserable Asiatics, right? The ones who wander on their belly. But go ahead.
But the only racial category we see mentioned in the Bible is black people. And so I want to make a point about that, though. And
oh, yeah? So Japheth, he's black, right? I think that he's spinning a whole bunch of things that we can check and we can find out that it's wrong. But let's go.
And clarify what I mean when I am bringing, why am I bringing that up? The reason why I'm bringing that up is precisely why we're having this conversation. And I believe that God made a point to acknowledge black people in his holy word and to uplift black people, the only racial group that he does this for, by skin color, because there's all kind of ethnicities mentioned in the Bible, all kind of tribes and nations and ethnicity. But when you're talking about a
so when he called them the Cushite woman, he was doing it by skin color or by ethnicity? Vince Bantu.
Racial category, as in a group of people by skin color, black people are the only ones mentioned. Now, why?
When they call a person Ethiopic, that's by skin color or that's by ethnicity?
Why does God do that? I don't believe that it's because black people are better than anybody else. As you mentioned, we got people going to the other extreme, trying to put blackness in the center of everything and making it an idol. Right. But God loves everybody. He is no favor.
If he loves everybody, then why is he singling out black people? See, you're cutting yourself in.
Of persons, and the gospel is for all people. But then why does he only mention black people and consistently in a positive way, which is very different?
So what is the name of black people? What is the name of this term that you're saying black people, Vince Bantu?
Different than how other ancient texts did. I believe it is because God knew that just like today, back in the day, black people were universally looked down upon. And just like God does with every other group that's marginalized, he lifts them up. And the Bible does this with women. It does it with the
Okay, but you said that you said that the Bible only talks about black people, but then they're looked down upon. But let's get to this Song of Solomon. Where did I think I missed that. Okay, here it goes right here. So let's go bring this in and let's see how he gaslights this. Okay, so he goes on to his, yeah. Come on.
Racist, anti-black ancient world, here comes this book called the Bible. And it dares to say in Song of Songs 1 and 5, I am black and beautiful. You ain't gonna find no other book, no other wall painting in the entire ancient world that says black is beautiful. In fact,
obviously he doesn't know anything about ancient Egypt, right? He doesn't know about the word Kim. He doesn't know Kemet. He doesn't know Kemetiu. He's not, Vince Bantu, you either ignorant or you're just lying. Yes.
Did you notice that?
No, what?
The scripture said black but beautiful, not black and beautiful.
Yeah, I'm listening to him. I'm glad that you're listening to him. Right?
He definitely quoted that. It said black but beautiful, not black and beautiful.
Well, let's see ultimately let's see the whole thing.
most people in the ancient world said black was not beautiful, and the Bible says black is beautiful.
Well, wait, what verse? What verse was
Right,
that?
I'm looking
Hold on, wait,
down.
Dr. Vince. What verse was that one?
Oh, that's Song of Songs 1 and 5.
So okay,
And then
go ahead.
The same Shulamite, the bride of Solomon, in Song of Songs 1 and 5, when she says that here we got to talk for a minute if we're going to talk about that verse, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a translation that says I am black or I am dark but beautiful, then you need to change that up or get a translation that actually catches what the Hebrew says, because the Hebrew word there is not but. That word in Hebrew says I am black and beautiful. So I'm glad we have it on the screen right there.
So now he's gaslighting. I'm black and I'm beautiful. He's talking. Is he talking about that the people have an African culture? Do they venerate blackness, or is it based on the sun? What are they saying? Right? Is it? Do they have a black reality? See, you. Okay, so let's see what he reads.
Because some translations.
Oh, good job. Zoom in on that one.
But beautiful.
Zoom in on that
Zoom
one.
in on
Now
that.
the host. Now see, we have a problem with these channels. Now the channels, many of these channels, the hosts don't seem to be too academic. So they're gaslighting. So they're going to make us feel good because they got Dr. Vince Bantu on and he's saying something sharp. And it don't have to be Vince Bantu. It could be Wesley Muhammad. It could be Billy Carson. It could be Rod Hayes. It could be Delbert Blair. It could be Phil Valentine, right? But when it doesn't go your way, do you come back and do you backtrack? Do you fix it? No. Jose is coming. Smiles is trying to come back in. Add to the stage. Okay, so let me go finish what he's saying.
One there.
See, I've never read. I never read this part of the Bible. I like that.
What does he like? Jessica says I'm black and I'm beautiful, but he didn't read in the whole context, right?
Wait,
Ain't nobody ever told me that one.
When did this pop up in the Bible?
Look at these guys. But you know what the bad thing about it is? They got a beautiful studio. They got that studio on tight, right? It's hardly initiated. Let me just get this off. Hardly initiated. They did this 3 days ago on around Christmas. They got 32,000 views, right? But our shows, we can't get 32,000 views. I can't see how brilliant Smash Rockwell is. He don't get no 32,000 views. Ankh, right? Don't get no 32,000 views. Sonetta shows don't get no 32,000 views. But these shows, right, who don't check information, like 19 Keys and the rest of these shows, they get 32,000 views. But let's go and let's hear what he got to say.
You know, it's sad because out of all the verses you've heard and you've committed to memory, whether you reading your word every day or you going to church and getting it secondhand, I've never ever.
Oh, I got to put the ticker on. This is for where's my banner? Copyright, right? So I'm just using this for educational purposes, right?
Seen.
Hold on, wait. And just to confirm, when they say black, are they referring to skin color here?
I mean,
we can see right here from the context because verse 6, do not gaze at me because I'm dark, because the sun has gazed on me. It's clearly talking about her skin, that the sun has made her skin dark, and then she's actually talking against the daughters of Jerusalem who dare to look down on her because of her black dark complexion.
Because she got a tan, not because she has a black reality, not because she has a black culture, right? Just because her son is skin is tan. Are you serious, Dr. Vince Mantu? And are you serious, Harley Initiated? And where else in the Bible does it venerate blackness? Where else? No, it doesn't. It venerates God. It venerates the Son. It venerates the stories, right? But it's not venerating people because of clines, populations, right? It's not doing that, because what we're talking about is clines and populations. We're not talking about just because your skin is dark because of the sun. But what else he saying?
Can we just read this one loud real quick? This one.
We need to hop in Psalms in the study. Let's hop in that next.
We do. We actually, no, we're going to Genesis.
We're going to Genesis.
Yeah, but then we can hit this one too.
We got to hit fact.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is incredible.
Black and beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has gazed on me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon. For why should I be like one who is veiled beside the flocks of your companions?
Now these guys can go crazy off of this. It's really not relevant. I'm just trying to show how Christian groups of people kind of like gaslight stuff. That's pretty much what I'm actually trying to show you. They're just saying a lot of slick stuff and they don't really mean nothing. So they're being black is beautiful. It don't really mean anything. I'll open up the lines just for a few more minutes in case Jose Francis got to say something and anybody else. And let's see. You're invited. Yes?
But what they did, Reggie, was totally misquoted scripture, but it didn't say nothing about black is beautiful. It said black but beautiful.
Listen, you see the hustle. I'm just glad that somebody else besides me sees the hustle. Right?
Because to understand Old English.
Say that again?
Like he doesn't understand Old English. He didn't look up the word comely, and he didn't see the word but in between.
No. That's the point. That's why we have to slow it down and know the difference between gaslighting. So Vince Bantu, his style is to find to make the Hebrew, the Christian people, olive black people, right? As if they have a black reality. And Huff's situation is to talk about slavery in justified in the context of his belief in Jesus Christ. And so these are all kind of like methods that I would that these type of methods, they don't really mean anything, but they sound good, but they don't really mean anything. They're not any tools for us. It's not truthful.
But the sad to the book, because the book justifies slavery. That's the sad part about his statement.
Is it sad? Is it sad, Jose?
So I said the sad part about Huff's statement is he is sticking to the Bible because the Bible justifies enslavement.
Yeah.
Vince Bantu making something up. So
yeah.
I don't know which is worse. I don't know which.
We're looking at different methods and different ploys. It don't make no sense. Anyway, it don't make any sense. We're just looking at different methods in which they use the different games that they play. So here's Vince Mantu. The other one was Wes Huff, right? Do these groups of people really care about African people? No. His title is Connection with African Spirituality, Christianity's Connection with African Spirituality, Witchcraft, and Pagan Holidays. How far do you think we're going to get with that? Right? African witchcraft is negative and pagan is negative. But he's talking about Christianity as if Christianity is positive. Right? So Christianity tried to eradicate Africans, the spiritual concepts of the African. Like, this little place in the Levant, right? This home of Jerusalem, right? The northern kingdom, Judah, the southern kingdom, right? Later becoming Jerusalem. This becomes for Vince Mantle and for Wes Huff, the one thing that they have in common, that's the center of their world. Not the whole history of humanity beginning in Africa. So anyway, let me just check. I want to thank and you can keep talking. Let me see what some people have to say. I don't think these people sometimes understand that these authors from these books, the authors were being philosophical. Yes, they are. But so they're just being philosophical. So it's just not useful. He always said that the Exodus actually happened. Can't prove it. Was he smoking? Verses. Yeah, Bible pages. That was the answer. They got these kind of views because people still love living in a daydream, unfortunately. Yes, because reality is so hard to deal with. I got the smartest chat in the world, right? Let's see what is going on. I want to see if I got any support from the people tonight. If I didn't, let me start now. I'm going to put in my Cash App. I'm doing a very important show. You may not think so, but I am examining further fallout that was missed with Huff and Billy Carson, but something more important. These are viewpoints on slavery. Let's see, support Brother Reggie. Isonic says we can't hear that dude. Oh, that was before that. Here's my Cash App. Okay, what is Robert Warren said in the Holy Quran? The Lord says He created you from a sticky black clay, and blow has created your spirit into you, right? Okay. If the Quran says that He's created you from a sticky black clay, no offense, then my DNA should be dirt, right? So that means He created me from dirt. That's very similar to the creation of the other Abrahamic, Adam and Eve type of thing, that they created you from the earth. So so the black clay, the black clay is important. And where did they get that from? Well, in African tradition, you was created by clay on a potter's wheel. So even was that borrowed from another tradition, right? And again, is all of that scientifically right? So if I was created by clay, I should be a clay person, right? I should be a mud person, right? That is in religion that makes sense. In science, it does not make sense. It doesn't make sense at all, right? It certainly doesn't speak to evolution, common ancestors, right? We did another show. They were all wrong with the pig, right? They made the pig the foulest animal, but the pig for humanity is the closest animal that has saved humanity, right? They talk about the pus from the pig and it's nasty. Well, they don't tell you about heparin. They don't tell you about blood thinners. They don't tell you about the vitamins. They don't tell you about the human transplants that are happening, right? They don't tell you about the stitches are made by pig intestines. They don't tell you that to treat burns, right, is made by the pig, right? God was wrong. Yahweh, Allah, El, all of them was wrong about the pig, right? So they messed up, and it's funny. It got them that the animal that they deject the most is the animal that has helped save humanity. I don't care if you're a Muslim or you're a Christian. You're involved in war, you're going to meet the pig in some type of medical treatment. Yeah, the human body is composed of elements found in the earth's soil. But if you do biology and chemistry, right, you find that we are really composed of amino acids and chemistry until you get to a point of the mineral world, in the chemical world, you get to abiogenesis. So it's not as my whole point of it is Isonic. Their God is giving you the most simplistic baby talk when it comes to the creation of the plant and animal world. That we don't need baby talk. That's baby talk. That's gaga gigi, right? So that's not befitting of a God to do baby talk on you, to just break it, to tell you that it's dirt. Where does the Bible talk about elements? Where does it talk about abiogenesis? Where does it talk about single cell and multiple cell?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. So that's gaga gigi.
But I wanted to say something to you. It seems like Billy Carson got set up, huh?
He set himself up. But the beautiful thing about the conversation is that Huff did not get the last laugh because there are people taking Huff apart, his own people, in the context of people who study the same text that he studies. They are ripping him apart. They are ripping Huff apart. They say Billy lied and Huff lied too. I think it's history, myth vision. Myth vision is tearing him apart. These are people that look like him, slaughtering him. There you go. Crazy people. See, this is like I love my audience. They're right there with me. Right? Crazy P, they are slaughtering Huff online. My brother La, what is going on, brother La? What is you saying? He's giving Islamic greetings. And Brother La is my brother, right? That is my partner. What we talk about is what we talk about. Um, uh, and y'all have to know that the reason why sometimes I don't really go in is because Brother La is my brother, right? And he never says anything disrespectful, but I'm always conscious that he's on, and I'm not here to try to hurt people's faiths. I'm not trying to change their beliefs. And anybody who knows me, I don't try to do that. It's just the big mouths who want to jump up and defend stuff. That's another story. But you could be whoever you want to be, and that's okay with me, right? But don't get up in here and try to be a elder yara or an apostle and try to defend stuff. Don't do that. Let me see who's yeah.
But do you realize part of the reason why he is now being ripped apart by his own community is because of people like you and Smash and others who are coming out and speaking out against it? Because at first they were supporting him and they was jumping all down Billy Carson intestinal tract, but now all of a sudden they're ripping Wes Huff apart.
Well, I think that people are like Smash Rockwell. People are like Unc. People are like me. From our platforms, right? That's going to be critical, right? And we don't have to agree with each other, but we could be critical on the BS, right? But then there's people in his own community that be like, nah, you not you hurting us, boy. You too Christian apologetic, boy. You done made some mistakes, boy.
But that is only because of platforms like yours that are pointing out that they should not be supporting that nonsense because they were initially jumping on his opponent.
Oh yeah, the Christian apologists was going well. They were going bananas, right? It was vindication on attacking them. Huh? Say what?
Carson was getting it initially.
Yeah, Billy Carson, which he should. Billy Carson doesn't know the things that he claims to know about. He might get a certificate from Harvard, but I want to know if he got a bachelor's education. Right? That's what I want to know.
Well, I'm questioning the certification because they need to take it back.
Okay. Well, if you pass the certification, you pass it. You pass the certification. I don't have a problem with that. But that doesn't mean that certification gives you the license to be wrong, right? It doesn't mean that. It's a grift. I definitely want to say, Joe, thank you so much for always supporting your brother. Ronald Green, thank you so much. Byron, thank you so much. Young Nelson, nice name. Thank you so much. And that's it. So I do a whole show on something major, and I get less than $30. I appreciate that. What I don't appreciate is that I'm doing this for you, and if I'm wrong, oh, DeMarco, thank you so much. But I don't get the support. I don't get the support that these grifters get. I don't get it. I don't get it. But I do. So I do want to say again. Let's just see who is out here. Young Nelson, Brother Byron, Ronald Green, Joe Burton, DeMarco. So our information is not how can I say our information is not valuable, but it is valuable. because most of the work that myself and some of these other people do, they take it and then regurgitate it, and they put it on these channels and with these large amount of views, and they regurgitate it, and they don't source where they got the original ideas, and they just and so I'm just asking the people that are on this chat that witness some of the great ideas that we have to support the people that you can trust. Why? Because we give you sources and we make analysis, and we're wide in our how can I say, in our knowledge about the world, about text, uh, and we can get you closest to academia. See, Brother Reggie can get you closer to academia than any of these pseudos that you see on the platform. Why? Because Brother Reggie's professors, Brother Reggie has had many professors, right, in universities. This is where I learned it from. I didn't learn what I learned on the street. I learned it in the classroom. Brother Reggie has been to Africa, Senegal, Ghana, Ivory Coast, right, Egypt, right? I have been there, right? Some of my professors are, how can I say, historic and well known. You go, these pseudos, who are there? Who's Billy Carson's mentor, right? Look at these people. Who are their mentors? But our people love them, right? And then treat the people who've actually spent 30 years, 40 years as if we're just nobodies. That just kills me. Like, I'm going to argue with somebody who can't pass a test because they got hair on their chest and they do some push-ups. I'm going to argue with you that you can't pass a test. But you say you're smart, but you can't write.
But you know, Reggie, there are a few people out here in the community who are writing, but that still does not necessarily right. If that makes sense.
Say that one more time.
That there are few people, one or two people's name I could call, who are writers, but that still doesn't make them all right and exact.
Well, that's a start, because at least when you write, we could check your sources. When you just talking and being fly, you can change your story. But once you start writing something, then that's a beautiful thing. Then that's permanent, right? When you run in your mouth, that's transient. That don't count. Then, yes?
I would agree with you, and I understand what you're saying. But then, unfortunately, there are people who write books and waste your time with 2-page chapters and 3-page chapters.
Right. But Jose, our people love those people.
Well, I don't. I was raised when I was growing up, reading was cool. They tried to encourage me to read. When did being ignorant become cool? Because I wasn't raised with that way, that ignorance is cool.
Oh, it becomes entertainment.
Nah, but I can't be that bored.
It's entertainment. That's what people.
Yeah, man, but it comes to the point where you, as a black person, watch other black people doing things, and you start to feel ashamed because it becomes funny anymore.
I'm going to do another show. I went to a conference, the ASOR conference, and I'm going to try to peel off a piece of that conference and show you how academics talk, right? Academics talk a little bit different than YouTube people talk, but we love the YouTube people, right? We like the funny hats. We like the fancy outfits, right? We like the articulation of words that don't mean nothing. You know, we like energy beings and light beings, right? We like things that make us feel good, like those brothers were saying, oh, I never saw that in the Bible. Black is beautiful. Oh, man, really? Like, oh, you're that he got you. Vince Bantu got you. So watch this show on Vince Bantu. But more importantly, continue to watch the shows that we have on these channels, Sanetta's channel, Smash's channel, Unk's channel, Garfield's channel. Even though we don't always, or it seems that we always don't get along, we are some of the best channels. Keep watching this space. And again, I'm happy that I got maybe 4 or 5 donations. I'm happy, but I'm also sad for spending the 2 or 3 hours with you and letting you know what was in addition and problematic that Huff said. Huff sounds just like a budging white supremacist, a Christian apologist, right? He had to start talking about slavery and then to forget about the humans' lives lost and then start talking about Jesus' abounding love. Huff, you can miss me with that BS, right? You're talking like how can I say how the slaves obey your earthly master BS, right? That's what you're doing. I'm not, and I'm hoping that other people reduplicate my video and pull out more points and show Huff who he really is, right? And at the same time, I'm not covering for no Billy Carson. I'm not covering for Billy Carson. Billy, you made a lot of money. You done sold a lot of tickets to places like Egypt, forbidden knowledge, walking around, showing pictures that you were saying that's Wi-Fi. You know that the rocks were cut with machines, and you've done a lot of damage. So it's good that you sit down for a while, right? And there's a whole bunch of others that need to sit down. But let me see who else is what's going on. Let me see.
Reggie, apologetic, and it's basically an word for a defense attorney.
Say that again. The last part I couldn't hear you.
I looked up the word apologetic, right? And it basically explained to me that it's a Greek word for a defense attorney. Someone who's done wrong and needs to be defended, and the apologetic is the one who defends a wrongdoer or someone accused of wrongdoing.
Most of what we know or think is Greek, so you're correct about that. It's being defensive. Wasalo soldier, Allah's real. You atheist, you don't understand. Okay, that's your point of view. AI has determined that by analysis of belief systems that man have the intelligence to produce the Holy Quran, right? What is this? Allah's very real. There is God, a force in nature that can't be described. You have a right. The Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, was just a man, but the living word of Allah, God, is the upper force. You have your belief system. I respect your belief system. Are you trying to prove anything, or are you just stating what you believe, Wasalo soldier? Have you been to Mecca? Have you been to an Arab nation? Please don't tell me that you're a person of African descent, and you could tell me that you believe this, but can you tell me that you live this? Can you really tell me the history of the Koresh people? So while we're talking, Wasalo soldier, Why don't you just start talking about? Why don't you just start uh, chatting about the history of your belief? Don't give me a statement. Give me some facts. Don't give me a statement. Give me some facts about the people in the culture. What did they believe before Allah? Right. I want to know some facts. What groups of people are you talking about? When did you convert?
But wasn't Allah a pagan deity before it became the deity of Islam? Or am I wrong about that?
Say it was a what?
Wasn't Allah considered to be a pagan deity before Islam, or am I wrong?
Um, well, there's origins of when that particular word, that name came about, right? And uh, you can look at the Ugaritic groups of people. You can look at the Jordanian um, um, groups of people, the Napataean groups of people, right? You can look at the Sabian groups of people, right? You can look at and then you can find this is like most of these religious groups that there's a pantheon of of deities, um, and or um, in these pantheons of deities, then a particular deity arises to be to get synchronized to be the main god. And so all of these deities have the same uh, formula. But what happens in these uh, when these doctrines get canonized, then they start deleting the early aspects of the earlier beliefs, and but they leave uh, signatures of these pantheons in it, right? So that happens with all of it. And let me just tell you, your gods was born when people first believed in that name of your God. Before that, your God was dead. Now, people come along and then they say, well, um, well, the original name was I am, right? Or it was the God of your fathers, right? Uh, that's fine. Humans are writing that BS. But you have a right to your belief. Just don't try to prove nothing. Don't try to prove no miracles. Don't try to prove no Genesis. Don't try to prove no creation story. Uh, Show me some mathematics, right? Show me some chemistry. Show me some biology. Why does the ancient gods get all that stuff wrong, right? You talk about miracles. I don't want miracles. I want science. I want things that we could use today. And most of these religious books, that's not what they're going to give you. They're going to give you belief, but they ain't going to give you no science. They ain't going to give you no tools. What tool you ever made out of a religion? What screwdriver? I'll take a screwdriver before any of these religions. A screwdriver and a hammer and a mallet.
I agree. Yes, a chisel is more useful, wouldn't you say?
A what?
A chisel is more useful.
That's exactly right. A
Because
spear.
hammers and chisel, and it definitely is very useful to us. It helped us.
I'm not saying that you can't construct books. That there are people that who are writing these books read into science, right? the customs and things like that that have early science in it. But my problem is God seems to be the one that's the most ignorant when it comes to science.
Well,
Did you go wrong?
their spiritual books are not science books, so they don't have to justify science in the book. That's not what the book is about.
Right. It's about their customs and culture. Spirituality is something that you can't teach. It's not a tool. Don't get caught with that BS. It's spiritual. I'm spiritual. Can't teach spirituality. Watch a little. Islam saved Africa. Okay, let's see. Islam saved Africa. Africa was full of tree worshiping savages until the Prophet Muhammad saved Arabia and Africa from paganism.
That person can't be serious.
No, he's dead serious. He's dead serious. Islam saved Africa?
Nah, that have to be somebody who's trolling you, Reggie, because that can't be a serious statement. Not on this platform, it can't be a serious statement. That'd be tripping.
Listen. All I can just do is put what someone posted up. It's not really relevant. It's not really true. It has no real knowledge in it. It's disrespectful. It's no tool in what that person said. There's no tool. So with that said, I think it's been interesting. Let me go and check. I am going to check to see if anybody else supported my work tonight. I have a couple of other shows. Today has been a struggle for me to get a show up because of my voice. I have to take Brother Law's advice and some other people to try to get rid of. I seem to have had caught bronchitis. And I did my best to treat it, but I still have a tickly throat. So DeMarco, I'm so appreciated to you. Joe, thank you always. Brother Ron Green, thank you. Byron, thank you. Young Nelson, thank you so much. And that's it. So before we go, is there anybody else who? Robert Mitchell, he gave me a donation earlier. I appreciate that. I forgot about my brother Robert Mitchell, and that's about it. And you have to understand that most of my shows, believe it or not, for the public, it seems to be only worth $40-$50. So what can I mean, listen, I'm not going to be a successful YouTuber, but that's not really why I do it. I really do it because I think I have value to help you. And for some of you who are interested in academia and really, I think I'm very useful to you in helping with methodology, and showing you shows with sources. Don't argue with me, argue with my sources. I always show sources. I'm critical on people, but the people that I'm critical on it, they make a lot of money and say nothing.
But
thanks. Yes.
Before you go, I want to say something. I wanted to do 2 presentations, but exclusively for your channel, because I cannot donate funds. But what I'm going to do is donate 2 presentations to your channel, and I want to be exclusively on Africa Online TV.
Well, listen, Africa Online, I'm partially streaming so I can get an audience to to know that the channel is there. If I did a show on Africa Online, I would probably only get 28, 30 views. That's why I am bridging the shows, and it has to be worth. It usually has to be worth my time. So, I got to at least buy myself a sandwich at the end of the. You understand? I mean.
No, I understand what you're saying, but since I'm in Trinidad, I don't have access to Cash App, so I can't send a donation. So I'm saying, if you allow me to come on, do 2 presentations. One will be a paper, and maybe we could discuss something else.
Well, if I have, okay, so my schedule is I do have my own shows, and when I do so, I do know that it's at least valued $50, $60, right? If I do me just doing a show and I don't know if there's any value on it, that's another story.
Well, I'm just it's up to you, Reggie. I can't make you do the show, but it's up to you. I'm just asking humbly.
Well, you have my email, Jose, right?
I did email you. What happened was I actually put together a half an hour presentation. But after I sent the blasted presentation, I realized it had no sound on it.
Yeah, but that was weeks ago. That was weeks ago. That was at least 4 weeks ago.
No, it wasn't so long ago. I don't think it was that long ago. It was about, yeah, it was.
Yeah, I know it was. It was about 4 weeks ago. And so that's what I'm saying. That I mean, you have 4 weeks to fix it.
I have to.
But if you it's like, okay, so I have to pick a day where let's say a day in the New Year's, right? Where it's an easy breezy day, and you can you can pop in.
All right.
And how long is your presentation?
I was figuring I only wanted to do about half an hour. I didn't want to take up too much time.
Okay. And so we'll just make it happen, right?
But the first thing I want to discuss is your syncretism paper. I want to discuss that.
That's fine. But now here's the thing is, when you want to talk about my concept on syncretism, do you want to ask me questions, or do you want to be the expert on syncretism? Where are we going with this?
I'll read the paper, and I could probably give you one or two slight impression, but I don't want to come across as an expert on it because you're the one that introduced the word to me. So I don't want to be the expert. I just want to read the paper and discuss what you mean in the paper and give my impressions on what I get from the paper. Because I can't be expert on something I don't know. I would never do that. You know I don't do that, Reggie. Not with you. Never.
Right, but you could on an easy breezy day, you can ask me questions about syncretism, right? But if you want to present on syncretism, right? It's simple like this. Okay, if I was to ask you, since you already have it in your mind, do you know what syncretism is?
Yes.
What is syncretism?
Syncretism means when spiritual traditions and deities merge to simplify it. When you merge the tradition, the spiritual traditions or religious traditions together. To simplify it. I know it's a little more complicated than that. But basically how I see it. If I'm wrong, you can correct me because I'm not an expert.
Well, okay. So the way we do this, right, is that you would get a formal definition of syncretism. That formal definition of syncretism would not be mine, right? So what we do is we use tools. So it would not be my definition of syncretism. And my paper shows my methodology. I get syncretism from other authors, And then I use a particular type of syncretism. And that particular type of syncretism in my paper deals with syncretism as related to Nile Valley culture. And then there's internal syncretism, and then there's external syncretism. And so we start with definitions. That's where we actually start from. And then we make analysis on the types of belief systems in the particular areas and how they transition with each other, right? And see how natures actually absorb the qualities of other natures. If you want to sometimes call them gods, if that's what you want to do, but that may not be right. And to see how those natures operate in particular different regions in what you call in this particular topic that we're talking about, which is Nile Valley culture, and even in particular inside the Sapats, which are the gnomes, right? And then there's the next form of syncretism is how it's external to the region. So I'll be interested, but my guidelines with you is that you go and you find the best dictionary for syncretism, and then when you make an analysis of syncretism, you help decide whether or not I might have applied it or you're applying the term correctly in the context of the usage of the term. So I, just to let you know, if you read my paper, I'm interested in the syncretism of beliefs, particularly the sacred animal beliefs and humans' relationships to those sacred animals and their belief practices within their gnomes and how they change over time and how texts change with those beliefs over time. So I begin my concept with the Black reality of, of this land when I say that from the Winnis Papyrus, right, where the king says that he's the Sakim, he's the Sakim Sa Kemet.
Right.
Right, he's the Sakim Sa Sit Kemet. He is the black ram born of the black sheep, women, right? And I build this relationship between the animals and humans and their
I went on the TLA and looked up the text, right? As part of the presentation.
the TLA. No,
but you got it. But I went into the TLA and it has the whole pyramid text of Unas in the TLA.
Right. So you have a source. So so I tell you where the source is and I tell you what part of the text that I'm interested in. The Winnis text is very long. So I'm looking for syncretism. I'm not looking for everything. And I'm looking for this relationship between the black cattle and the black ram and the belief systems of the human is related to the black cattle and the black ram.
No.
So that's how I build syncretism.
But I went in the TLA and I found the particular part that you're talking about, and I was scrutinizing all the glyphs and everything. So when I do the presentation, I wouldn't look foolish.
Oh, all right, but okay. But my paper gives you I just gave you the transliterations, and I gave you. Let me just pull up my paper to show you what I'm talking about, because I
I
think
know. I
you
know.
just okay, so I don't have to do it, right? Because the I actually give you the primary, uh, the
And
yeah, I
so
give you yeah, okay, good. Okay. So that's where I build synchronism, because in the beginning of this process,
what
um,
I just did. I just said, well, I want to just go and kind of show people the glyphs as best I could. But I chose the TLA as opposed to choosing something else, because that was the easy thing I could have think to get access to at the time. So it doesn't look the same as your diagram,
you said
but
what?
it agrees with the translation.
Because it is, it's a primary. I give you the prime. I give you the prime. I give the TLA is a tool. I give
I
you the actual primary on the wall,
I know.
right? Huh?
I know.
Right. I give you the primary on the wall. The TLA becomes secondary as a tool, right? To
Yeah.
verify, yeah. And then I give a whole bunch of others. Well, in the small paper, which I'm updating, but I give you that's all I do. I give you primaries, and I give you primaries, transliterations, and translations to
I,
build the relationship between sacred humans and sacred animals.
I know, but I was just doing what was probably simplest for me to be able to understand and read the text. Because I'm not on your level of being able to look on the wall and read it that way. I probably would have confused myself. So that's the only reason why I use the TLA. It's easier for me as a beginner reader to use the TLA. Because you could go into the glyphs and you could break down everything a little bit more succinctly. But well, I could do that with the TLA. I could look on the wall and
Right, and that's great. That's how can I say that helps when you can actually get the actual TLA listing of a. Okay, so the people that don't know, okay, the TLA is a thesaurus. It's based on, and this thesaurus is sometimes have text and it has words, and allows you to actually see some of the text, not all of the text, but some of the text, the translations and transliterations. And uh, um, the TLA for a while wasn't digitized. Now it's digitized, and now we can perform queries on it, right? Which is a recent thing. When how can I say for the work in the earlier days, you would just have to you didn't it was just harder. It was just harder to do, right?
yeah.
It was just harder. It's in fact harder to do. The resources were just harder to find the resources. So I had to actually read books and pull them out of the books. And a lot of times, sometimes when you're dealing with books, it's not in the TLA. It's not in the TLA. The TLA does not have everything.
I realize that, but fortunately, I was able to find this text.
Okay, that's one of the texts. That's one of the texts. So I have uh well, we'll talk about it, right? We'll talk about on a lazy day. You got my email. Just email me, and on a lazy day, like a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, uh, then I'll open up a link and we'll talk.
All right. Okay.
So Robert Warren says a question like, how did 1/3 of the West Africans born here as slaves become Muslims before they are brought to America and reprogrammed, right? Well, uh, there's a trans-Saharan slave trade, and then there is African Islam in Africa. Many of the great kingdoms of Africa had chosen Islam. Islam was a great formula for Africa for a while, right? So many of the great empires sprung up were Islamic, right? And so so many of the Africans that were born here were in fact part of those kingdoms. And some of the other ones were part of the other kingdoms that were not Islamic, like the Akan cultures, right? But those that were from Senegal, Mali, right? Those groups of people, they were not. They were Islamic. The other groups of people, the Nigerian groups, right? The Yoruba, those groups of people were not Islamic. So even in the famed Alex Haley's work, where you see Kunta Kinte was a Muslim, right? So from Jufaray, right? So the African Islamic period was a great period until it wasn't. Until they realized that their real masters were in Mecca, and Mecca and that controlled them. And it wasn't in their best interest. It was in interest of those caliphites. And internally, internally, it was the great African Islamic empires were incredible. But the problem is that slavery was a part of that. And that was problematic to Africa, right? But Africans were able to Africanize Islam for a while. But there's always been problems. African Islam by itself is a beautiful thing, but when you have when it's controlled by people who don't love Africa, that's problematic. So the people who came during the slave trade was a mixture of different groups of people, and no matter what you were, you coalesced on a slave ship and in the sugar plantations in the Caribbean, or the rice plantations in the Americas, or cutting down trees. But at the end of the day, Christianity in Americas made you lose even those aspects of who you were for a European Christian identity, right? And so you lose your connection to Africa, because Christianity wipes it all out. It calls you pagans. So I was just responding to the chat.
All right. I'm gonna get Reggie because my wife just came and I don't want to get in trouble. So.
Please don't get in trouble. Or you're not one of those people that that when your wife is I'm just joking. When your wife is not home, you got a dashiki on, you're doing African things, and then when your wife comes home, you take off the dashiki. And
I kind of, sort of, but not exactly.
Well, I understand.
All right, so we'll talk about the presentation.
Okay, so lastly, let me just check to see if there's any donations, and I would appreciate it, and then I'm out of here. So let me just see. Here's my Cash App. I don't have some of these other accounts, but this is what I do have. This is what I do have. Support Brother Reggie. I don't have Venmo. I don't have any of those other things. But here's support Brother Reggie. I do have PayPal. I'll give you my PayPal. Here's my PayPal. Oh, my PayPal is Rap Marketing at hotmail.com. I don't have Venmo or any of those other things, but any donations that you have, I appreciate it. And your comments help me a lot to let me know what you're thinking about, what's important. I have what's happening here? This was okay. I gonna do a presentation on. I just did on Huff. I'm doing a presentation on Chief XBS. A presentation on ASAR. And what else do I have? Yeah. So those things are those presentations are coming up. Definitely on Chief X and on ASAR. And just did the Huff thing. And I thought I was going to do something on Asherah because the Hebrews, they're interesting. They have cleansed their religion from Asherah, and I think I might want to talk about that. And that's pretty much it. Joe, thank you so much. How are you? Season's greetings to you. I definitely appreciate your donation. Say something to me in the chat. In the chat. Tell me how you're doing, what you're working on, and I so appreciate your support, Michelo. Let me see. Let me get this right. Michelle Ozo. I'm going to get it right. Michelle Ozo. If one day you come on and you speak, I can make sure that I could pronounce your beautiful name correctly. Thank you. I so appreciate you. But let me just try. Michelle Ozo. Michelize. Where are you from, by the way? Is it you're from West Africa? You're from, where are you? With that type of rhyming name, is that indigenous or is that? Let me know. I'm glad you are doing fine. So let me know where that name comes from. And I would appreciate it. So with that said, it's 12:57. Questions, you got questions, please let me know until the show ends. Anything informative, anything that you can use. I am that's why I try to do these shows. I try to give you tools that which you can use. So when you're analyzing, when someone brings up Huff and Carson, that you drill into what was wrong with Huff. You just don't leave it out there and make it mean nothing. Make it mean something. Brother Joe, I wish I can get in the car like that. If you're in New York, you let me know. All right. I see what you're working on. That's a nice outlook. Right. Appreciate that. Yeah. So the reason for these shows is to kind of cut into issues and make correct analysis, at least what I think would be helpful to you. So in analyzing Huff and Carson, for most of us, it's not important to care about what's in the Bible or not. What's important is that Huff messed up with something very relevant to us. I'm not talking about space aliens. I'm not talking about Huff messed up when it came to dealing with slavery and its rationale, right? And he brought it back to Jesus, right? Which is the worst thing that he could possibly do. Because like I said before, is that he believes that Jesus is God. So that means if Jesus is God, then God in the Old Testament gave slave laws, so Jesus is responsible for it. So this is all in Jesus' doing. So that hurts him, but it doesn't help African people because it keeps these same sentiments alive. So that's my analysis for the night. That's my analysis for the night on making, I don't, what everybody went bananas on about Billy making mistake on crucifixion. I care less about that. Nobody can prove the crucifixion and all of it. None. I can't. What I cared about is something that was relevant, which is slavery. So with that said, I am going to buy me some medicine tomorrow. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna buy me some medicine tomorrow, and I'm gonna work on another show. And thanks for being a part of this show tonight. And but at least while you're still here, let me know if the show is valuable to you. Press 1 or tell me why the show was valuable to you. I appreciate that. And then I close. Press 1 for the few people that I have on, and tell me why the show was valuable or not. Because the difference between my shows, think about it. My shows, I give analysis. Some of the other great shows that we have, they translate and interpret meta nature. Some of the other great shows. Some of the other great shows, like Camdiverse, does DNA, right? Does genetics, right? Some of the other shows that we have, they give you information on archaeology, anthropology, evolution, right? These are the but then there's the tomfoolery shows that do light beings and Anunnaki and aliens and gaslight, right? They don't give you any tools. So I'm happy that I'm among a group of people that actually can give you tools. And the difference between me and a lot of other people is that I could talk to scholars. I could go to conferences, right? I could stand up for you in places where most of the time we can't get in. Right? So sometimes we have these armchair wrestling, and where we're wrestling with ourselves, but I'm trying to help some of you, and I've been successful in getting some of you into conferences, and I have been helped myself. Jenem Ankh just helped me get into a conference that I needed to get into. so that you can be there, so you can ask the questions. And so I will do a show on the ASOR conference where I talk to Dr. Tyson Smith, right? I talk to Black scholars, but this time I get a chance to talk to Z. Tyson Smith directly, right? And that's an important show. So with that said, Harris Duckers, yeah, your shows keep me awake from having a religious mindset. Oh yeah, because I'm trying to just give you tools. So there you go. And I'm somebody. A lot of these other people, they make themselves important. You can Google me. You can Google me outside of YouTube. Some of these other shows, all they do is exist in YouTube. I have another show I need to do about my community politics. That's been funny, right? I'm hoping I'm working on a case, a defamation case, and I'm hoping that's successful. So I have something positive to talk about. Let me see. African culture don't teach us how we went into slavery. The Bible does. No, Kalanji. The Bible don't tell you how we went into slavery, Kalanji. African culture, African history tells you exactly how we were enslaved. Not the Bible. The Bible don't teach you that. The Bible don't tell you specifically what groups of people invaded Africa. The Bible doesn't tell you what specific groups in Africa, right, involved themselves in slavery. What are you talking about, Kalanji? The Bible is metaphors. It ain't no history. What history is in the Bible that's relevant to the African slave trade? The Bible was already written. So you want to take metaphors, Kalanji, and to make that history? You chat back. And then you're talking about the Bible. Which Bible are you talking about? The Hebrew book or the Christian book? Which Bible are you talking about? Or you not talking about the Quran? Which book are you talking about? You're talking about some old, outdated Greek book and applying that to African history? You're talking about the LLX, the Septuagint, and applying that? Or you talking about the damn King James book? The King James book? What are you talking about? Man, I'm going to end this show right now. Unless Kalanji got something that he want to show me how the damn King James Bible, the high and mighty, the thou, right, written by the Europeans, how that Bible got. All right. Peace to the family. It's been a good night, and we will talk. We'll work on another show in the next day or so. Thank you so much. I so appreciate y'all. Peace. Let me just close out. And and remember, let me share this. Coming up, we have we do have my elder, one of my Babas, but Benati Montgomery. He is going to be, where is it? he is going to be doing a show on the problem with using Amo, Euro-Asian ways of knowing to translate the Medu Neter. Amo, you see this right here? These are the Amo with the people glyphs, the plural, the Amo. Those are Euro-Asian ways of knowing to translate the Medu Neter, instead of what's happening over here, which is aliens and Stargate and the rest of the bananas stuff. And that is going to be January 11th. And that's pretty much what I wanted to let everybody know about, that we are supporting. And hopefully he will be on one of two shows, Smasher show or Ankh show. So with that said, I want to thank everybody, and I want to say good night.
Bullshit, but you really need that info. Give me that info. Clear consciousness and watch the lies fold. Then you can let the truth flow. On Sonetta TV, Sonetta TV. When you feel that melanin about to explode, like you feel the wind blow, it's Sonetta.